is Land and Geographic Information Management System, presented by the interim CEO, Ms. Duncan, Navajo Housing Authority. The purpose of this leadership meeting is that we want to get the ARPA funds to build houses for our people that need houses, and how do we strategize this? And I know that we have NHA as one of the housing authority, and we have Dene Development Corporation that also can facilitate and help with the housing. And then there's Neville Engineering Construction Authority that has been helping with the bathroom additions and things of that nature. So we're trying to strategize as soon as possible, because we have ARPA funds that haven't been spent, and we're trying to storm this and get this going. I was hoping other members would be on board, such as Honorable Crotty, Honorable Brown, Honorable Begay. We have Honorable Henyo on board, and myself, and Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. So presenters, I'm not sure if this was presented to you for the factual information that is needed to get the ARPA funds, and what is the hiccups that we have within the pathway to get houses out for our folks that cross the Navajo Nation, 27,000 square miles of Navajo Nation that needs housing for everyone. That's, the weather last night, it was really windy, and I'm sure homes were probably, roofs were probably need repair. The shingles are probably blown off and things of that nature. So even folks that don't have homes or makeshift homes probably were worried about their structure. And now that the winds have subsided and the sun's back out, but we were blessed with some snow, and the winter's here, and now that we're trying to get this funding going. So that was the main purpose of this. So I don't know if any, let's go into receive reports. We'll go ahead and turn the floor over to Navajo Housing Authority. CEO interim, you have the floor.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and Vice Chair and the Committee of Budget and Finance. We appreciate being able to present. Just a quick introduction. My name is Heather Duncan. I am currently assisting NHA in the leadership role. With me, I do have Mr. Dwayne Wasetta, who is the Chief Operating Officer. And I appreciate the extension of allowing us to present our limbs. With that said, I'm going to turn the time over to Mr. Wasita. He is the expert on the limbs, and I feel that due to it being called a leadership meeting, he'd be the best individual to provide expertise in this area. So with that said, Vice Chair and Chairperson, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to Mr. Wasita.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Vice Chair and committees and guests. My name is Dwayne Wasita. Thank you for calling upon us to give us some recommendation on what we've been implementing over the last 10 years in terms of trying to address some of the challenges of what we do. I'm not sure, I sent out a PowerPoint earlier. We were having problems with trying to get the email through. I'm not sure if that was provided to you. It was sent out about 8:30 or so. But it's a PowerPoint of some of the areas that consists of the limbs. Okay. As I listened to what for some of the areas that the Navajo Nation, especially the Budget and Finance Committees, in terms of researching the housing planning development aspects of it, and then at the same time looking at the expenditure plan using the ARP funds. The document, the system that we utilize has three components. And those three components that we have, that we started this, just give me some background history. This system was started in 2008. And the reason why we started this was establishing a local coordinate system to manage NHA's realty property. The number two area was establishing the digital terrain model for flood hazard mapping with topographic studies to meet the federal environmental clearances under HUD. The third reason why we put this all together was establish assets management to assist in reporting during our requirements for NAHASA activities. So those three components is the main emphasis, the foundation of this system we call the LIMS. In the overview, when we started looking at all these problems, the Navajo Nations or challenges, the Navajo Nation had 5 state plane coordinates across the reservation and 2 UTM systems that track the locations of the properties across. So this relates to surveying, legal surveys. When I first came on, we were doing a lot of the scattered sites. We were finding some of the scattered sites were off by a mile or even 2 miles because of the way they were using benchmarks and then shooting the distance in. The other area was the challenges we had with land status. We had BLM, indent allotment, tribal fee, tribal trust, private, state, public landowners. These were most of the biggest challenges we had with those were all in New Mexico. The other challenges we had was the grazing issues for utility right-of-ways or even for housing. One of the other areas that we had that was the reason for us to put this was the inaccurate or outdated chapter boundaries. We were finding some of our older development sites that was developed were having some challenges between the chapters, saying that no, that's not in our chapter, it's in their chapter. So we worked on defining those areas using surveys with the system. The other area was establishment of a survey standard with the nation. One of the things that Housing Authority we worked on is looking at the standards that will be acceptable for the Navajo Nation BIA. The other challenge that we had was no true flood hazard mapping data with the nation to meet those federal requirements. And then the last part of it was the partnerships. Everybody was kind of running with what they have. So when we rolled into this in 2008, the solution was establishing a coordinate system that covers the Navajo Nation. This coordinate system, basically, NHA went back and benchmarked a lot of the BLM monumentations and then added some monumentations to tighten up the distances between the state plane coordinates that we had in order to get a tighter and better survey grade. This improved accuracy and efficiencies and met the federal geographical data and geodetic control standards. The other part was Housing Authority implemented and adopt the state survey requirements and used that. While we're doing this, we created our own survey standards, which we went through with the Navajo Housing Authority Board as a standard that we'll be utilizing. Part of the solution that we had on here to address some of the challenges was we updated and modified some of the aerial mapping. We conducted some aerial mapping of some locations that didn't have clear maps. Develop a digital terrain model. This digital terrain model helped with the hazard mapping. The last part was finalizing a flood hazard mapping for the nation. One of the things that we are finding with surveying that was being done in the 70s and 80s, or even in the early 90s, a lot of those benchmarks were way off in the section corners. And by us surveying and resurveying, finding this, some of those distances were of errors was creating problems with right-of-ways, with in-and-house service, creating issues with some tribal trust land and fee land where properties were not, that were leases were issued, but not in the correct location. And I think one of in the part of this whole program in 2010, we went and performed a geodetic ground control establishment. NHA's implemented 74 new control points in order to tighten up the surveys within the Navajo Nation, which we utilize and our consultants utilize as ground controls in order to tighten up the survey information that we're gathering across the reservation. Part of this, the phase 2 portion, we updated some ortho tiling, meaning the aerial imagery. A little over 3,229 tiles for the Navajo Nations were updated using several different information that was gathered, and then at the same time flying some of these locations that did not have clear information. In the last portion, under I call it the phase 3 aspects of this land information systems, that we went and did some flood hazard studies. The flood hazard studies consist of 3 different years of us updating some drainage analysis in order to identify potential flooding. As you know, back in 2010, there was a lot of flooding that was occurring, and a lot of those impacts were some of our development sites. So what we did was we went through and did a three-year approach on gathering data, utilizing the aerial imagery. The flood information that we gathered was off of the aerial imagery. So we used some contours, not to meet the requirements of FEMA, but we used the requirements to have potential areas of hazards that if there is a potential project, we come back in and drill down if that is within a floodplain, meaning that a floodplain determination comes in and says it's within a 2-foot contour study. Part of this flood hazard portions is that Navajo Housing Authority created a NHA flood hazard policy, and part of that was a freeboard policy. If some of these locations of potential hazards of flooding are within a 2-foot area, we have a requirement that we have to do a setback in these policies. And these are all set-off calculations using the digital elevations aspects of it. And the reasons for, the last reason I've mentioned about reason was assets management. Navajo Housing Authority has over 8,000 units, and then we had some areas. By us determining what was NHA property from the old 1960s developments to the Mutual Helps 1937 Housing Act and the HAZA, we basically use all the information from the survey and some of the leases in order to identify some of these areas here, in order to manage our property, so to know, to see what we have. These NHA properties were overlaid in a system in our land information. And that land information is just basically, it's an internal system that we utilize to survey, the leasing, the environmental, and the assets component of properties. One of the things that when we had this system coming up in 2019, Navajo Nation NHA were hit with a cyber attack in November. Hasn't been open to the website. We're still using it internally, but we haven't rebuilt the area, some of the damages that has occurred through the cyber attack. So part of this area here that we had in the third reason of the asset management was the LIS, the Land Information System, and data integration. what we did was we brought in some of the utility data that we had, load capacities, dates of construction, all of that information, laid them into our subdivisions and even some of our scattered sites. Because some of these areas here that in order to build, we have to have those utility capacities. Having the utility capacity data is very vital in projecting if it's possible to build. So with NHA's internal reporting system, we have a client management, a construction management, NHA capital assets and facility management, a leasing and realty, photogrammic and topographic data, and then we have our base map, which is our geodetic control system. All of this information that we utilize is all run through, partially run through ArcGIS. And at one time we were looking at doing a web-based to get that out, but unfortunately with the cyber attack, it hindered that. I guess the big question, what's next? Well, the big plan was the LIM was designed to provide NHA with a tool to manage its structures, its real estate assets to service its clients across the nation. The Housing Authority was looking at developing additional tools to assist with Navajo Nation's communities in planning out their resources to meet the needs. In 2012, Navajo Housing Authority allocated a little over $7 million in terms of SWABAT study, 110 chapters given it master planning. That was going to be part of the systems to have that available data out there. We have the data digital forms, but it hasn't been released. Just the hard copies have been released to the chapters. The other part of what was next with the LIMS was providing that Navajo Nation Community Planners base map information. And the information that we've gathered is all from other programs like Fish and Wildlife, Water Resources. All of this stuff is brought in to at least to give us an idea of what is the guide to growing the communities. The other portion of what was next was the digital terrain models that we were looking at to determine the flood hazard boundaries and slope analysis for local drainages. This information here is still is needed, been updated since we first started this 10 years ago, 11 years ago. With the recent years of climate change, some of that topography had changed by soil erosions and some of the actual drought areas there. Part of the areas that was what was next was LIMS was determining the land status by using its management documents in the Navajo Nation georeferencing data. This will help out in terms of some of the information that Land Department is utilizing so it can give a better guidance tools. And the one thing that our major plan was the hosting of data across the tribal entities in order to assist our communities and to determine the restrictions and opportunities, because there's always been a discussion of, well, why do we have to do that? We've already done that. And looking at the other part, it was the demographics through the census data from across the communities. Bringing that GIS information in here on the platform was the initial thoughts. We do have data on the housing subdivision complex, which is utilized, but it's utilized not in the system itself, but utilized on a different platform. And the last portion was the environmental conditions and requirements for reporting. So the big thing is what next, and this is the integration of data from other entities, because we have the demographics we move together. We need natural resource data, realty, transportation, utility data, housing data, and base maps. Those will come from the output applications would be the NQA, NDOT, Navajo Nation Realty, NHA, Neville, Land Department, BIA. The output application are the planners and developers, school, health, public safety government entities. So the one thing is what next? I think this is the question that has been posed, and we've been following discussion. Determining costs to involve what is the housing. Well, we do have regional costs, and some of the regional costs is based on where we build infrastructure costs, because a lot of our material is trucked in from the outside of the nation. Looking at those areas of cost is something that we have outlined. Also, too, the portion of this is determining sites of for housing, and the number of housing. And a lot of our number of housing is based off our application needs and wait lists. And then the implementation aspects of it, of the housing portion, how it's rolled out. Because at several times there is areas there where we do have site selections, but we have transportation, we got through the demographics, but we don't have infrastructure. And to build, if we have to invest $8 million on a 2-mile infrastructure for 20 housing, that just makes it hard to really make it feasible. The other areas that I will hear through discussion is the planning and development requirements, the federal policies. Everything that we got baseline off is either by travel code or based off of federal code for environmental. The income limits, I'm not sure that, I know there was a discussion about NEPA in terms of tribal ARP, but that's something that's a housing policy that's something that, I guess, from the nation, looking how the programs. I guess to add more information to what our discussion, NHAs utilize this mapping information when planning for housing developments. This hazard, the flood hazard mapping, the chapter boundaries, the land status, utility maps, Navajo Nation Fish and Wildlife sensitivity areas, the abandoned mines, maps, and road transportation. All of these are part of information that we utilize when we present to some of the chapters in the club to identify feasible lands. This information is that we have from the nations and assist not duplicating, but giving a respective determination of what we have. Part of the information that we have here is the SWABAC chapter community master manuals that were created in 2012. These areas gives the input and provide geographical information and structural information of optimal sites within the chapters that the chapters have deemed more acceptable since they were involved in the planning. One of the areas that I know with discussion over the last several months was scatter site developments. And the scatter site development, we have a program income requirement under NAHASA, but I think one of the biggest things that they question, how do we turn them? Home sites have a criteria requirement that we have. Must meet a minimal feasibility requirement, not being a flood hazard mapping, not on a steep slope, or have drainage concerns, or implementing structures on site, or rock outcrop, or heavy forestry, or forest areas. All this plays into the data that we have. We do have woodland data that we have utilized that's for wildfires, that we can determine if there's heavy fuel loads in those areas just by looking at the colored infrared orthos that we've gathered. Also part of this is the home site, scattered home site, must be in a 1,500 foot electrical power or water line and accessible for construction traffic. There has been some areas that we could not get construction equipment out there due to the crossing of drainages or narrow roads. So those two main critical areas for environmental and infrastructures are critical for that we use as a minimum requirements. one of the things that we look at, the most cost effective that we have forms of housing is the subdivision or pod housing, where you get to run the infrastructure and then you have the roadway versus the single homes. Some single homes that we have in rural Navajo Nation can have a total development cost well over $450,000 when you start including the power lines, water lines, improvements to the road. So one of the things is, I guess, from what we have with the LIMS, this data, we're utilizing all the data that's been gathered as a component, because we have these requirements under NAHASA, under HUD, that designate these income limitations, what we can spend on a housing development. These stringent environmental policies are a challenge if we don't prepare ahead of time, but it's one of the things is working between the federal requirements and the tribal code requirements, and it's making that bridge. And so the LIMS is helping, but it's one of the things there that we still don't have a future data where we're building new infrastructure, where we have planned capital improvement for infrastructure. That data would be great to have to foster economic growth across the nation versus having just to bill as you see you want to develop. So this line information system that we have, that I gave you kind of an overview, is how NHA utilizes those components of the three area of reasons was the survey coordinate systems, the digital terrain for the flood hazard mapping, and the assets management to make sure that we have everything that's documented out in the locations. Vice Chair Smith and Chairman Hinu, that's kind of a brief overview on this land information system. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Wasita, for the presentation and also the information that was provided through the PowerPoint. Committee members, do we have any questions? Do we have members on board? Oh, go ahead, you have the floor.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much for bringing this report to Budget and Finance Committee. Hi, Jimmy Yell here from Black Mesa, representing 5 chapters. My question is there any listing that where these houses should be built? Are they ready? Do you have any schedule where and location that should be built, these Navajo housing? Do you have any listing? That's just my question. Are you ready? Schedule ready? And this type. That's my question. What Chairman to
Neil here. That's a good question. Committee members, any other questions?
What's it?
I have a question. Just to Mr. Wasita. I see that in the what next in your report before the last page. This is what next, integrated of data with other entities. You have NTOA, NDOT, Navajo Nation, R, NHA, Office of Land Department, and BIA. That's a lot of layers to go through. And my question is, what could the nation do to help waive some of these or to eliminate some of these redundant processes? Because home site leases very hard for people to get right away, and they just give up. And they talk about, well, I'd like to live on the Navajo Nation, but it seems like we never get a home site lease. To several veterans about that, young veterans, and they live at the border towns, and they say, we want to go home, but it just takes too long for the process to be going through that. I know that's a factor. And all these things that are layered here, the output application, planner, economic development, school, health, public safety, government, federal, state, county, and local, those are all part of the, I guess, the matrix to establish homes, not just one home, but to establish homes out in the area. And that kind of goes in line with what Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair asked about. Where is there a certain location that you guys have, a sweet spot, I guess you could say, to put homes in an immediate time frame? Is there anything like that out there? I know we see the maps. I see the location and the assessment and floodplains and the ground control points of the area of Navajo Nation. For example, you have I guess a picture of Winter Rock here, and it's an aerial view. And you have all these houses that are built back in the early 60s, I think it was, late 50s probably, on the left-hand side of Route 12. And I guess the other question too is, Mr. Wasita, is scattered sites. Is that for potential homeowners? Because I know that NHA builds homes for rental purposes, and I'm sure that you can't build a rental home out in a scattered area because it's a rental. Is this solely for folks that want to have a NHA housing as a scattered site? And of course, all those factors have to be in a positive manner, not on the slope, not in the rocky terrain, location, floodplain zone. All that has to factor in if that's going to be a place to put a home. So those are my questions, Mr. Wasita. I'll turn the floor back over to you. Thank you.
Vice Chair Smith, to answer Honorable Yellowhair's question about a listing. NHA does have a listing that we've been working on. And if you recall back in the NAKI meeting over the summer, when we were talking about some potential sites that can be applied through ARP, we had a little over 32 different development sites that we had, but everything was based off, and we're trying to finalize and get the calculations of utility capacities and water and power in order to move some of these sites forward. That's what we're looking at. One of the areas that we were really pushing for is Kayenta. We had some areas out there, the city of Kayenta, but we had some, because the property was inside the town site. The town site had their own initial leasing process, which impact those areas there. So to answer the question that we immediately were working on, we do have a little over 32 different potential sites that we've been working on, but we're still, the utility capacity commitments is the critical part in order for us to build out, because the planned objectives at this area for these 32 sites was a little over 600 units. So the key things that what we're finding lately in the last month and a half is, I understand that the lateral on the Cutter lateral on the west side or the east side of New Mexico is being turned on. and that's some areas that we were looking at gathering some utility data for some of the areas out in Whitehorse Lake and some of the areas in Pebble and Tuttle that have been planned in those areas of, since we do have that verbal, we did have the assessments in there, but the utility, the water capacity was one thing that we could not confirm. So we do have a listing of some potential sites that we have within NHA. And I believe that reporting that we've done was in April of earlier this year. And then to answer the other question, Vice Chair Smith, that you posed under the what next, this integration of data, just to let you all know, NTUA has been sharing data with us with some of the areas for utilities that they have of some of the power lines and water lines. One of the critical stuff, because of Homeland Security requirement, we can't share gas lines, but we do have communications with them. With Navajo Nation NDOT, we received their data that they have for roadways that marks the locations of areas of paved and not paved. In terms of Navajo Land Department, we do have some data from Land Department, but not a lot. One of the biggest struggles that we probably never get is that we've been asking for is the digitalization data of all grazing permits. This would help out. I know that Navajo, or not Navajo, BIA is still under a paper form, but that grazing digitalization would help out with the integration aspects of it. So we do have already data that we share together with NTUA, NDOT, and some portions of information with Navajo Land Department. The other areas, like you mentioned, that for output, we talk about all of this with the community growth area under the master planning. This area here with the planners we talked, that mentions in here, this is similar to the club. Having those individuals have information readily available to keep the continuous planning of those communities. Also looking at the economic areas of new schools being built. This is one thing that we've been looking at. As we build new schools, there's going to be a need for employee housing. And those are critical areas under NHA's part of essential housing for some of these teachers or healthcare facilities, public safety. So looking at those areas, what is being developed is some of the critical things that that information is integration. And it has to be a portion that all of us understand how to utilize this information. When we first created this, started using our flood hazard mapping, we started sharing information with the chapters. And the flood hazard was supposed to give the chapters at least identification that these are areas of potential not to billing due to the fact of flooding that may occur over 100, let's say like a 100-year flood zone weather type. But we found out that those information that we were being provided was being given to the consultants, and then the consultants in return were charging the chapters to put together a report, which it wasn't supposed to be used that way, where the consultants can use the information and charge the chapters or other entities. So that is something that we need to look at in terms of how do we take control of those. The second question regarding scattered sites. All scattered sites are home ownerships. Those are all built on a one acre portion of property. Our average length of time through, and it is lengthy. I'm actually, yesterday we were in discussion with a house that we were building in Western Agency, and we just found out somebody pulled a new mobile home next to the home site, put a septic system in, and they put the home right in the right-of-way that NTUA was creating for the water line and power. So this impacts us on terms of having those information. If if the private land surveyor would have checked some information on right-of-ways with NQA or potential areas, maybe this home site survey wouldn't be impacting the NQA project for a power line extension that we're trying to build a home. So with some of these scattered sites, they are challenging just because the location, if it's in tribal fee land versus Indian allotment, each one of them have a different challenge. But preparing for those challenges is one thing that we're building with having information available. So this is one of the big strong points that we have, is that we do have the scattered site program available, but it's a lot more expensive than a regular development. In terms of the public rental, there is a need for public rental, a higher need due to the generation. We call it Generation X. A lot of the younger families and younger individuals who are requesting housing want housing closer to communities that have paved streets, internet, television connections, or just schools in general, or health facilities. So looking at some of the information that we have, this is one of the things that we really trying to put out. But the big thing that we struggle with is those infrastructural needs of utilities across some of these major communities, because as you know, during the presentation from Walter Haas a couple of weeks back with ARP, is that NQA only receives the utilities. They don't bill out new facilities. They count on NHA, IHS, or other entities to build the facilities, and then return, we hand it off to NQA to manage. So this is something that has to be looked at as how do we build out some of these community systems to improve our infrastructures across the reservation. Sir, I hope that gives you some information to the questions that you asked. Thank you.
Wasita, appreciate that. Committee members.
Vice Chair, this is Delegate Brown.
Good morning, Delegate Brown. Do you have a question for Navajo Housing Authority CEO Wasita?
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay, I'll let you have the floor. You have the floor, Shananda, Mr. Honorable Brown.
Okay, Shananda, thank you for helping us with the meeting. Ado, Shama, Peggy, thank you for reminding us. Those are very helpful, by the way. I know that. My apologies for getting on the call. My calls weren't going out, I guess. I thought cell phones were independent from these power lines, but I guess we need to be connected. However, the power is back on, so I'm just checking on relatives here. But my question to Mr. Wasetta, sounds like it's you. Thank you for the information that you share. And I think for myself, I'm always trying to find a way for NHA to help you to spend the money. I know that we wanted to help in spending some of these funding, and again, I know we're asking the same questions, and there is a purpose for myself, at least, when we repeat these questions. It's because we want to make sure that we convey the message to our people. My chapters have been very proactive in building houses and finding ways for sweat equity projects. As we have met previously with yourself, the board, as well as some of the other COO with NHA. Again, I understand that what are the main obstacles on spending the money? The other thing would be, I know that your subrecipient agreement is no longer in place. That was done away with in 2019 by the board at that time. How can we work on repealing that so we can have the subrecipient agreement for our chapters? What I'm thinking is if we can just strategically move on. I know that there is a waiting list across Navajo Nation. It's not just my chapters, but all the 110 chapters. We do have relatives who need homes. How can we, maybe equity is not the right word, but how can we ensure that our people get their name on this nation listing? I know that within the HAZA fund, they have to be under the federal poverty income guideline. That's another problem that I would like to tackle also. And if you agree that it keeps our people in this poverty mentality, if we tell our people, well, you can't work, or if you get a job, you might not be eligible for these housing funds or for housing with NHA. So how do we empower our people using these funds? What needs to change? And what I'm thinking on my own from what I gather from attending meetings is that clause, the federal poverty income guideline, seems to hinder us from spending some of these money. So that's a guideline that we would have to change. So again, at the last Budget and Finance Committee meeting, that's where we asked if we can have HUD to present to the council also. So we are not, so we're all on the same page. HUD is with the HAZA funding, NHA, the board. And I really would like to hear from the board also. I think sometimes when we hear just from the CEO, we're missing out on really important information from our frontline workers who are building houses, who are in these offices like at the KN to NHA and Chinle and Shiprock, Crown Point, all over. I think that's where a lot of I don't know if someone has collected data from your office on possible remedies that we can find, even your other staff from the other offices. Well, what are they bringing to you? So I just, again, want to help. How can we spend down these funding so we are not losing? It seems like it's not just, we know that it's not just NHA that has to return federal dollars, but it seems like it's pretty frequent with Navajo Nation offices across the Navajo Nation. So if you can please update us on how we can help. It sounds so simple, right? Just to build houses so we can spend those funds. The other part is, can Navajo nonprofits apply for some of these funds so we can help you following the building codes on building houses for our relatives. Right now, I know that I'm looking not too far from where I live, and I have an auntie who lost her home. Her husband died in it, and she moved home. So she lives in one of those really small shacks that does not have insulation or drywall. So of course it's really, really cold now. So she can't live in there. So she's making her monthly payment. And I want to know how we can get our relatives these homes, quality homes that can give them, keep the warmth in. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Committee members, any other questions for Navajo Housing Authority?
Okay, this is Delegate Yellowhair again, Vice Chairman.
Honorable Yellowhair, go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Wasetta. Thank you very much. I had a very simple understanding. I'd like to ask you this one here. I've been a councilman from Black Mesa area they call Gene. I'm looking forward to if these NHA houses that can be built in a Navajo petition land like in Hartford area. There's a house needs to be needed for the people up there. and also in Peabody area too. We're looking forward and build maybe a few of NHA housing too, because of a lot of these elderly. They're living in Kayenta. They're away from their family and they want to be nearby. And NHA housing is hard to get it right now. You have to find a house in a different location in order to get in. Like people may might even live in Crown Point from Black Mesa, just based on the eligible house or available. These are the issues we have, Mr. Waseda. And I look forward to have a house to be built in Peabody area, and then also in Hartwood area. And also, the next one is how much money do we have now available to build a house, Mr. Waseda? These are very general questions I'm asking you, so we can move on a lot. So we don't want to talk about just repeating, do the same thing. Just like Mini Mill Waterline Project, they have 45 years. They have done nothing yet from ISS. They're too stubborn. They're going through too many layers. So these are problems we have in the Navajo Nation. We really need your help to move on with this NHA housing. If there is funds available, I would like to be one of the priority in these two areas. So don't wait for it. We don't want to turn this money back in. It happened many times. Navajo Nation NHA housing returning federal funds back to U.S. Treasury. We need to do our best to progress these needs for the community and our people out there. That's just one question, my friend Waseda, and these are very general questions. I don't talk too long. I want to make it to the point. And that's my style. Yeah. Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chairman. Out of the facility, Chairman. They will take a break. Last year, the Christmas song, they all tell them. They will just think hard. Yeah, no,
Oh, Chiche. Yeah, committee members, any other questions? If not, I have a question. Thank you for those questions. I think you know that we have 24 delegations throughout Navajo Nation, and each 24 is going to request where would be a potential area, and I think that should be looked into for 24 delegates out there, because we have a lot of homeless folks, and if NHA could at least build a subunit for the 24 out there in their area, that would help to alleviate some of the needs that our people have. Like last night, the winds were whipping really hard, and I was just thinking about them. Oh, sa baganda ten sa baganda isi Dutch wado isi da bitas kazo tseson dojo dandat kasta the dal kasta egi. Those are the things I was really thinking about. And then the roof, are they stable? And that wind was really strong. It was hitting. It wasn't like the spring winds where it dies down for a while and it's just a constant heavy breeze, and then it whips up and the gusts up to 35. This was just a wind that was 40, 50 miles an hour, is just constant. And finally, when the snow hit, it settled down. And I was thankful that it wasn't all night. And I even heard thunder. Saw lightning, and I was like, wow, this is in December, and it's normally not like that. So these are the things that I'm requesting, that maybe it could be a feasibility study. I know you were talking about Eastern Agency, but as an overall for the future, you know, like 5-10 years down the road, and we have ARPA funds that we could utilize to spend it. I don't know how much money was provided to NHA to help, and I know NHA is supposed to be the lead in providing homes throughout the Navajo Nation. And I know that Bluestone was one of the big tickets here in Houck area, but unfortunately, for circumstances that's beyond our control, and I'm hoping that the Gallup water line will come across, and maybe we can talk about that and get the Bluestone put in that location. And get the property from the owner so that we can have a ingress and egress for the folks that will be utilizing that. And I'm glad that you spoke on the Generation X too, because that was my question. Is that available for NHA to kind of go towards, helping folks that want to have at least rental? I know we're always gearing towards to the low and no income. Is there a provision in there that we could say, okay, these subunits within the townships of certain areas, and let's say, for instance, in Shiprock, Chinle, Tuba City, Wonder Rock, Kayenta, and areas that are populated with folks that could, and even Delcon's growing. They're going to have a hospital over there. Could that law be amended through the federal codes? Could the council pass a resolution to have the Congress look at the aspects of housing authority so that they could build apartment type houses? And I know that the folks would probably like something like a studio and utilize that until they get on their feet, and then build their own house or buy a house or do things of that nature. Is that feasible, or is that set in stone where it's just geared to low to no income, and that's all that NHA is going to forever do for the duration that NHA is in this business of building houses? Eventually, I guess the federal government is looking at getting houses out there, get the Navajo people outfitted with homes out there, so there would be a less burden of folks not having houses on behalf of that. The other one too is we do build these things, burnout situations. Folks need at least a temporary shelter in wintertime, especially because folks are using wood stoves, and if their home does happen to burn and it's unlivable, then those things are a factor to that. So, thank you for being on board and listening. And I'll turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Rosita.
Good afternoon or good morning, Vice Chair. This is Dwayne again. Quick question. Is there any more questions regarding the limbs? We're getting off the presentation.
Vice Chair, this is Delegate Begay.
Honorable Delegate Begay, before I recognize you, Mr. Rosita, I think those are kind of questions in general to get a little bit of understanding on that. Answer that. And before you answer that, I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to Honorable Elmer Begay. Elmer Begay?
Chair, Vice Chair, this is Delegate Begay. And then Mr. Rosetta. Like I was asking before regarding Dalcon, so we haven't meet yet. But regarding the plans you have, do you think that will work in Dalcon, or what's the best way to implement that plan over at Dalcon? That's my question.
Thank you much, staff. I'll go ahead and turn the floor back over to Mr. Rosita. Mr. Rosita, you have the floor.
Yes, sir. Chair, also.
I'm sorry, who spoke?
Is it Chair Henio?
Chair Henio, yes. You have a question you want to ask NXA?
Yes, thank you. Just on the presentation, the LIS system, he is really interesting. How NHA is working on this technology to get all the land data in place. And just my question would be is how
thoroughly are they working with the Navajo Land Department as far as getting their data integrated into one another? Because I know Navajo Land Department's been doing a lot of work with their software also. And so with that, I just want to know, how are they actually openly working with a Navajo Nation? Because it seems like we're all working in silos and we're trying to do our own little thing in these areas. And I think it's time that we open our doors to one another and just share information. The reason why I say this is because of the fact that Navajo Housing Authority had a comprehensive land use plan. Hold on. There he goes. A comprehensive land use plan that they did several years back with SWABAC. And for some reason, they decided to take it back and hide it from the public. And so I don't know if this is going to be the same case again here. Yeah, it sounds good, everything good, but it just seems that we like to kind of be our own little area and shelter all the projects and stuff that we're working with. The reason I'm asking this is why it could be shared is because you have the Navajo Nation chapters that are trying to do their land use planning, and they need a lot of help, especially when it comes to mapping, identifying land statuses within their area, and then doing the inventory of the current housing stock within their chapter boundary areas, and at the same time the highway count. At the same time, they not just, when I say housing stock, I'm not just talking about NHA. I'm talking about every house that's considered a home, whether it be a hogan, whether it be a NHA house, or whether it be one of those rent-to-own type of sheds that we've seen always being transported across the Navajo Nation. And so that's the question I have with this LIS system that they have, and how are they willing to share it with the Navajo Nation and other entities? Thank you, Vice Chair Smith.
Committee members, any further questions before I turn the floor back over to Mr. Wasita? Mr. Wasita, you have the floor for these questions that were posed to you. You may proceed.
Oh, thank you, Vice Chair Smith. To answer a couple of questions from Honorable Brown regarding the spending of monies in terms of the projects that we have, and with Housing Authority here, with what we have with the projects that have been outlined, we have a little over $163 million of projects that are scattered between the 24 different programs under NAHASDA. These projects are dealing with maintenance and housing developments for public rental, housing services, model activities, and part of that there, we still have, going through to release and get these projects going, we have to go through the environmental release of funds. We have roughly over $43 million going through the process of doing the environmental review record in order to release these monies into different stages of activities. So there's roughly about over $200 million of projects that are earmarked. We're just having to go through this environmental process. An environmental process can take as much as a year and a half versus as quick as 6 months. It's depending on the level of activities we have. So those are some of the areas that we're looking at. Some of the changes that we have, we've made changes to our environmental review process on expediting this. But I think one of the things that we're looking at on some of the new developments, what is critical, what we're talking about here is the infrastructure. We got to look at these infrastructures, as you all seen with the presentation from NQA, that they're having to go outside and hire entities to do some of their construction aspects of it. And these are projects that have probably been planned out. For NHA, we got to make sure that we have those utility infrastructures in place. So looking at some of those areas is making sure that we have those in order to build out, because those will always be a challenge. Like I just mentioned earlier, on Western Agency, where we had a right-of-way, we had area, and somebody came in, pulled their mobile home there. Now NQA is having to redo all the paperwork, which will put us back maybe minimal 8 months more, maybe maximal, I'm not sure, a year or more, which will hinder the turnover of that house. So there is challenges, but they're at different levels. The other areas that we talked about, that you were asking about, was subrecipients. There's opportunities to recreate a program, but the one thing that we need to be mindful, and that's what we need to understand, is the reason why the subrecipient program was abolished. We had over $89 million of program activities where they failed, and they ended up having to be either fixed or renovated in order to put it back into stock. One of the fine examples we had, NHA Housing Authority had a program that funded called Whipplewell Group Home. The community had arsonists there a year and a half ago, burned down a $2 million building that was supposed to be utilizing for senior citizens out in that community. A day after it burned down, the Navajo Nation Senior Center, just 100 or 200 yards away west of there, they burned that building down. So one of the challenges is having individuals on the subrecipients prior, having those operation and maintenance monies available to operate them, because there's always been challenges in the past. If we can make sure we have a good foundation and show that we can carry these programs through, it'll be successful. But it's unfortunate that we're living in the past, but we have to figure out how we're going to do that. So, as I mentioned 3 months ago, Honorable Brown, we had a presentation. It is doable. But we need to figure out how we create these programs to make sure that we have the operating costs to carry them through. I provided that back in then, I think it was in May, I provided a copy of subrecipient program and some of the strenuous requirements under the HOSDA. It's something that we can look at in order to empower each other, because I always say is that if the person builds their home with their own sweats and hands, they have more added value to it versus having to be built, being just built for themselves. So it's a good initiative. It works at other locations. I think that's something we can start out small, but we got to fill that capacity foundation. I lost track here. I'm sorry. All the other areas for some of the potential challenges, I'm always going to be harping on infrastructure. As you all know, I presented our ARP plan a while back, and we were questioned why NHA is investing monies into fixing or building new sewer lagoons. As you all heard from NQA does not construct new systems. They just take them as the individuals build them, and then they take the operation and maintenance of them. So we have several projects that we're doing the community systems to build out, and that's one of the biggest things that we look at, because early mentioned from Honorable Yellow here, IHS has a big backlog. They haven't built water lines. NQA is just the operator that takes it, but the other entities are the ones that build out. But some of these areas there for infrastructure are very costly, and the impact, we have to take it from certain areas in order to build out for housing. So those are one of the struggles, because it's either roadway turnouts, water, utilities. Housing Authority uses the monies that we have in our development to cover some of those costs for housing development. So it's looking at how do we bridge some of those other fundings together to blend that, and maybe with the reauthorization of NAHAZA that's coming through, that allows that, because under the 2000 prohibition of IHS and NAHAZA, when we had money separated, there was wording in there saying that IHS money cannot be co-mingled with NAHAZA. But with this reauthorization from other tribes is that how IHS sanitation and some of the programs that they have funding can merit and work with NAHAZA to build out some of these facilities. So that legislation has not been approved yet by Congress, but that's something that needs to be monitored, because I know that 3 months ago there was some potential word changing. I'm not sure what kind of impacts with word changes that have occurred, but that's some of the areas that at a legislative level we need to monitor. Moving on to Honorable Yellow here about Black Mesa and Hard Rock. Sir, one of the things that I'm not sure if anything changes on the MPL, what the requirements are. I know at one time there was a requirement that we had to get the consent of the Hopi tribe to build housing in some of those areas. I'm not sure if that has changed over the past couple years, because I know that we had some areas in Genito that we built and we want to expand, and we're getting mixed messages on that. But that's something that I open my door here. If you have opportunities, come and sit down with this and me and my staff, and then seeing where we can put together an idea and plan approach to seeing where we can look at some of these housing. I know Hard Rock is one of the hard-hit areas out there. When I used to work for Natural Resource BIA, I was actually the individual out there monitoring the fence line project that was being constructed by the Hopi from the Navajo Nation side of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So I'm here. My door is open. If you want to, you can make contact with me, arrange some time, and we can discuss this further in some of the areas that we have, and we can share some of the information. The other area with the IHS, and this is the thing that I mentioned earlier with the reauthorization, NAHAZA, there is a provision in there that some of the monies that IHS has could blend with NAHAZA funds. But we got to make sure, I need this, reauthorization has to happen before IHS will actually be allowed to move monies together to co-fund sanitation or water activities. So there is a possibility of doing that to bridge those areas. Because I tell you this, in 1989, I walked the road from Forest Lake all the way to Rough Rock, did the archaeology environmental when that road was on the BIA priority listing for improvements. Well, some 25 some years later, that road has never hit the construction part. So there is information there that's readily available, which can be utilized. I know that some of the families there, the elderly that I probably met and interviewed, are no longer there. But there is a push for some of the individuals, but it's having that infrastructure out there, and it's going to take a larger voice than just Housing Authority. It's going to take collaboration with IHS and NGUA and NDOT on how we pull that all together. Because one of the biggest things that we got to look at for some of these rural area developments is the infrastructure, roadway. We got to have materials for some of the gravel. We need materials for the paving, materials for some of the ripraps and stuff out there versus hauling it from off the reservation onto Navajo. So my doors will be open if you want to arrange some time, and we can discuss this in my office or one of the conference rooms we have here. The other question for Vice Chair Smith, where can we build housing within the 24 delegates locations? Within the area we do, like I mentioned, there is some locations that we've already went through some of the major developments of potential housing. It's unfortunate some of these, the chapters, it's going to be we're going to be challenged on building housing out there just because some of the infrastructure that we don't have. And how do we do that? And I think that's one thing I'll do later this week is work with my staff. I'm going to send all of the council delegates a file package of all of the community digital, the community land use plans and the manuals that was created in 2012. Those information, if they're not readily available at Chapter, we'll give you the digital copies of those locations. So see if those locations that were planned in 2012 are still concrete, so to speak, in terms of planning of the communities, because those are areas that they spent several months creating from the community levels, and I think that will help out in terms of really honing in on what is doable, what's not doable, because there's going to be the components of the infrastructure and the transportation that's going to be real critical on building some of these communities out. The other question about Generation X individuals. Under NAHAZA, sir, there's an 80% threshold, meaning that people who make under $63,000 a year, depending on their family composition, are eligible under housing. It's not, it's income based, but it's depending on their household composition. So there's the criteria on the income base is roughly $63,000 or less. That's the max point for individuals who do make those eligibility requirements. But just be mindful too, some of this stuff that is critical on here that impacts individuals. You can't have domestic violence. You can't have court orders in place. You can't have federal or this impacts individuals when they go through the background checks and they have a criminal history of family violence and they're applying for housing. And some of those areas there is a criteria under NAHAZA and in some of the areas that in our policy. So there's opportunities, but just the guidance requirements, it does impact getting people qualified. But the income limits is $63,000 or less. Okay. There's one thing that we need to look at, to look at other areas. There's individuals that I've been trying to work with to provide assistance. These are individuals who want to secure a private loan on the Navajo Nation, maybe through Wells Fargo 184 or through a veteran loan program. One of the things that lenders are challenged with is the potential of foreclosure, where they have to go through the tribal court system. That is one of the challenges of how some of these lenders are not wanting to lend on the reservation, and we've been researching to see how that can be addressed. But it's going to take some time to figure out that process of how we go through our judicial system for foreclosures on some of these properties where they have a lender provide funding for housing. So that's one area that we can look at to expand housing. And this is one thing that we've been talking with Navajo Credit Services a year and a half ago before the pandemic. How can we, Housing Authority, help them look at some of these areas? So those are some of the continuous areas that we talk about partnerships, how we bring those together to expand housing. Burnout units question. This is a continuous conversation that we have. NHA does have emergency housing for certain activities, but it's all under natural disaster. That natural disaster requirement is what we have in our policy. And basically, that's kind of the policy part that challenges us how we provide services for burnout. And I think this is one thing that it's going to be one of the areas that we look at. You talk about somebody's house burned down by a chimney fire. We talk about some of these areas of faulty wiring. And I know there was a discussion earlier that one of my staff brought to me about housing code. I think a lot of these homes that are built by genuine individuals, but some of these areas of maintenance has contributed to some of these impacts. But this is going to be this has to be a nation program aspects of it, of how do we address this and look at that, because it's reoccurring more and more every year, and how do we make that program is something that's, I guess, for ourselves that we're going to need to look at, but at the same time looking at the levels of outside the nations with some of the programs that we provide under the Navajo Nation government. The last question from Honorable Begay regarding Telecom housing. We haven't met. I know, sir, I sent an email back to you when you a reply asking for the best date and time. I'm not sure if you visit with your LDA, but just depending if you want to have a Zoom, I'm open. I know that the question of you posed of how can NHA put sidewalks along a state road and put lighting there. It's unfortunate, like I mentioned in my email, that any type of activity under the HOSA has to be part of a site control. So those state roads areas there, NHA doesn't have the criteria. We're unable to assist that. But in terms of a subdivision, like we have a property, there is areas that would put some solar lighting or even some ground improvements there. But if you, when you take some time making that confirmation, when's the best time to meet, like I mentioned earlier in my email, my door is open, just let me know. Vice Chair, I hope that's the end of my answers. I'll turn it back to you. My throat's getting kind of dry here. I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you, Wasita. Committee members, any other further questions or follow-up questions?
So, Chair Henio, Vice Chair Smith.
Chair Henio, do you have a follow-up question or?
No, I asked questions regarding the LIS because that's what Mr. Wasita wanted. He wanted to get back on track and ask questions about the LIS. I did ask those questions, but it seems like he don't listen. So, one thing I was listening to his responses, and one thing that popped up was the lending on the Navajo Nation and how banks are reluctant to lend. And this is an issue way back with Navajo Housing Authority. I believe when Chester Carl was still the CEO there. And is the title plant and setting up an own Navajo Nation title plant, title record keeping system, even though the land does not belong to the nation, it's held in trust, and then there's a lot of land. When it comes to lending, the land has to be recorded, and usually on fee land is with county recorder, and then the warranty deeds in place there. But I don't know how if they're still moving forward with the title plant, a Navajo Nation title plant. So that'd be a question. I don't know if you'll be able to answer that again or just skip over it. But that's my question, Vice Chair.
Okay. Chair Henio, we'll go ahead and turn the floor back to Mr. Wasita. There was a question that was posed by Chair Henio. You have the floor on basically what he was asking.
Good afternoon, good morning, Chairman Henio. Sorry, all your questions was on my page 3. I'm sorry. To answer the questions regarding the limbs, it is when we first started this program, was harnessing what information that we have out there to make a more quantified decision in terms of all of the policy requirements that we have, either tribal or federal. So it's been in the works and still continues in the works. There's some areas that staff been looking at to expand on in terms of how do we improve this in terms of different community relations, in terms of data transferring. So it's a continuous area that we're working with, and I commend HUA and NDOT for providing information to us with some of the information that's coming out of the Land Department. One of the things that with Land Department that we're doing with information is that when we find errors with surveying of subdivisions, properties, or even rights-of-ways, we've transferred that information to them in a hard format and then into survey data through GIS. So that collaboration, so they have information that they can plot in their system. In return, we get that information, say when we're going to be doing a conveyance of home ownerships of 1937, that is being packaged up and then transferred to BIA. So BIA can utilize information to input into their TAM system. So there is the communication at that level, but there's still a higher level that we're going to be looking at as we keep growing. But I think the sharing information with Land Department is happening for activities that we're doing. I'm not sure at other levels that we have in terms of non-NHA projects, but at our level, we are transferring what we have with real estate data. The other questions, what happened with SWABAC? Well, SWABAC, as the information was completed in 2012 and given out to chapters and planners. What we're going to do is, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to get the digital formats and send those back out to see if the chapters and the club people can have put those in their file systems that they have. And this is something that we can look at in terms of demonstrating. I know that a lot of us use Google Maps and seeing how that information can be overlaid in there. And those are areas that help chapters on some of the previously approved plans of developing the communities. Okay. The other questions regarding locations of property, non-NHA property. Unfortunately, we don't have a tremendous amount of information on properties that are non-NHA, but we do have information on the 2010 demographic studies that we have. But with that 2010, when we were encoding and looking at some of that data, there was some errors on that because of how what I mentioned earlier on the monumentation when the GPS information was collected. But we do have data on some areas across the reservation that are usable. The last question regarding the lending, and this is the one thing that I think at Navajo Nation as whole, and I've been talking with Mr. Jay-Z a while back on, I know they were trying to look at how did they bridge and open the veteran home loan programs through that. And I think one of the things, there was some struggles with the title plant getting a TSR in a timely manner. But I believe now with Michael and their system, they can work with the BIA in getting that title timely. It's just the one area of that foreclosure. How do we get by that in terms of the foreclosure having to be processed through tribal court? I think one of the things some of the lenders were looking at was either going through a state or a state court system to recapture some of the default loans. But this is a discussion that our NHA will still continue with how we can bridge that area there, because there is opportunities there to have give assistance to individuals outside of the low income category. And I believe that, I mean, if there's somebody within the Budget Finance Committee that has those strong ties with the lending, some of the challenges and how we can look at, I'd be very grateful to have some assistance on how we could bridge that. And that would be kudos to both the organizations. So, but I'll leave that with there. Mr. Chairman, if you want to discuss more with that, my door is open. And then I can give you an overview of what we've been talking with credit services in the past and some possibilities that we are looking at. Okay. Vice Chair, I turn this back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Batista, for the response on that. Continue with your question answered properly.
Vice Chair Smith, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I keep getting muted here. Thank you for the response, Mr. Wasita. And that's the main thing of sharing information is what my question and issue is that we all need to share information with one another, especially with the chapters. And the chapters are the ones that are out there at the local level with working with the people on a daily basis. And the land use planning committees really are at a disadvantage because of they don't have the technology that we have here in the central level of the Navajo Nation government. And so one request I would like to make is that the next Eastern Agency Council meeting is coming up in March of next year. And if you be on the agenda to provide a presentation, an overview of what the LIMS system is all about. And then from there, we could get more information down to the local level. Also, Vice Chair Smith, and this is for a leadership discussion. This is what we wanted to have these discussions for on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, is that when you, there was mention of working with the concern that we had last night with the wind howling and with the cold weather coming in, and some of our families who have homes that need to be patched up, maybe a window replaced, maybe some shingles to be replaced here and there, holes patched up, and so forth. And right now, NHA cannot do that. Because of the way they're structured and how their funding level comes in. So, Shananta, Budget Finance Committee, and any other delegates that are listening in, we need to have maybe a serious talk about bringing the HIP program back on. And I know other tribes, I listened to the Tribal Interior Budget Council, and this was one of the topics they were talking about was housing improvement program within their tribes and how they've been helping the people. And I think that's something that we need to really seriously think about bringing back and requesting for funding either through the Indian Housing Block Grant and take some of that money and diverting it over to a HIP type program. So, Vice Chair Smith, something to think about for future discussions. Can I yield the floor back to you?
Thank you, Chair Henio, for that information on the housing improvement HIP program. That is important because I did see how devastating that wind is, and I haven't done an assessment on my place, but as soon as I'm off the phone, I guess I'll look and see what, and hopefully no major damage was done to the shingles or anything like that. But we are subject to the elements of the weather, and we do need folks out there to have their homes repaired, and it might be just a minor repair, a window or door, or even to the entrance to their handicap ramp, or shingles being replaced and things like that. Those are preventive maintenance, so they don't have a place that would go into what they call being dilapidated and neglected, as folks always look at on behalf of that. The other aspect is trust land and how do we acquire loans. I know credit services tries to help with loans to build a house, but looking at the next presentation, a total bid price for a 3-bedroom is $500,000. That's quite a big chunk of money. So, these are things that what Chair Henya spoke about, and I'd also like to invite Mr. Wasita to the Fort Defiance Agency to provide this information, because that's when we have all the chapters on board with Fort Defiance and bring this forward to them and their information and getting that for the club. There's several club members out there that are very active, and they're wanting to help, and they want to zone off certain portions of the area for housing development and cemeteries and things of that nature. But this information would be vital to help them coordinate that with the chapter and the Navajo Nation, and also asking for requests for help and assistance, whether it's funding or whether it's land withdrawals or things of that nature, and federal guidelines and regulations. Those can be amended too. So ahead, Shananda, I think we spent quite some time on this, and I'm sure we can call for a future leadership meeting on this, and this is beneficial to each one of us as budget and finance, because things like this we can assist our people in and get them help out there, and we're the entity, or we're the committee that can find funds out there and to help facilitate this. And like Mr. Wasita said, his door is open, so if you need to sit down with him and talk with him and get some more information on behalf of Navajo Housing Authority and be more informed, and invite him to these meetings and even the local chapter meetings if it's possible, because I know that the doors are trying to be opened up January 1st for the regular quorum and have members attend those meetings, and we'll see what happens on behalf of that, because the new variant and our people have been vaccinated too. So, I'll turn the floor back over to the committee members if there's any further questions or follow-up. If not, we'll go ahead and go to the next presentation. Committee members.
Yeah, this is Delegate Yell here. My last question, Mr. Wasita.
Akushi, Honorable Yellow Hair, we'll let you have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Wasita, bring this information before Budget Finance Committee. My questions are very general again. Based on your bank statement, how much money do you have for the Navajo Nation, Navajo Housing Funds in your bank? Do you have any idea, Mr. Wasita? It's not a kid. Truth.
232. But we have 206, I think, was allocated for property. Vice Chair Smith?
Yes, Mr. Wasita, go ahead.
Okay. To answer the questions with Honorable Yellow Hair, within the Nahaza Lots account, we have roughly $232 million. Out of the $232 million, like I mentioned earlier, we have $163 million that have the release of funds to engage spending money through the Nahaza. There's roughly $43 million out of there that's sitting, not sitting, but going through the release of funds process in order for the funds to be allocated and released through the Nahaza program for environmental review. So there is roughly about a little over $206 million that's an active program allocations out of the 232. And out of there's got to understand too, there's operating operating costs that Housing Authority runs about $22 million to $24 million for the year, and those are some of the subsidy requirements that we have to carry out the program. The new funding hasn't been allocated to Housing Authority, so with the current monies we have roughly over 232, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Wasita. Was that your answer to that?
Yes, sir.
Committee members, at this point in time, I think we've asked a lot of hard questions, and I'm sure there's more and more questions, but we'll go ahead and accept this report. I don't have a, could we have a roll call just for the record? Ms. Nakai, Shada?
Yes, Cecilia, Vice Chair Smith, we do have Sherelle on the call. Sherelle, could you do the roll call as requested, please? Thank you.
Yes, good morning. This is Sherelle. I can do the roll call. Good morning, Budget and Finance Committee and everyone listening in on the call. Roll call for the Budget and Finance Committee. 24th Navajo Nation Council Leadership Meeting, date December 15th, 2021. Honorable Chairman Jamie Henio.
*6 for those that are muted, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm present.
Honorable Chairman Jamie Henio is present. Honorable Vice Chairman Raymond Smith Jr.
Present.
Honorable Vice Chairman Raymond Smith Jr. is present. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair.
I'm present. Good morning.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair is present. Honorable Elmer P.B. Gay. Honorable Amber Knesba Crotty. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown is present.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown is present. Honorable Elmer P.B. Gay. Honorable Amber Knesba Crotty.
I'm present, Delegate Begay.
Honorable Elmer P.B. Gay is present. Honorable Vice Chair Raymond Smith, you have 5 members present. Honorable Vice Chair.
Thank you, Sherelle, for that roll call. We have 5 members on board with the leadership meeting. I appreciate the report on 5A from the interim CEO of Navajo Housing Authority, Dwayne Wasita. Thank you for your time and appreciate that. Moving on to item B under number 5, receiving reports. The CEO, or Dene Development Corporation, you have the floor on behalf of the Dene Development Corporation.
Delegate Smith, for the record, my name is Osencio Tom. I am not the CEO of Dene Development Corporation. I am the tribal liaison, but I want to thank you for giving us the floor here. Vice Chair Smith, Chairman Henio, thank you for having us on your agenda today. I know you all are very busy, so we're honored to share the floor with you. Other members of the Budget and Finance Committee, Donna Finney, Delegate Yellowhair, Chanela, Delegate Brown, Peggy Nakai, for corralling all of us. I also want to recognize my colleagues from the Net Development Corporation who are on the phone. Mr. Waseta, Ms. Heather Duncan from NHA, thank you for enlightening us with your report. This portion of the agenda is going to be quick and dirty, like Chanela, Delegate Yellowhair said, I'm going to adopt his style, make this portion quick and dirty. So, a couple of inch, let's not Geneva, Chin, Cutness, and this is Chedo, Hanagan, I'm the tribal liaison with the Net Development Corporation. I've been with DDC a little over 10 years now, and I'm very honored to be part of this organization. You know, we're fortunate to do some very big things, and we're honored to be able to do work on behalf of Nikita Napa. So quickly, I want to give the floor to my colleague, Anson Dooley, who's the Director of Special Projects within DDC. I'll give him some time to introduce himself. Mr. Dooley. Mr. Dooley. Okay, I'll go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, the floor is yours. Introduce yourself, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. I already did. Good morning, everybody. Vice Chair, Chair, and everybody in attendance. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Shea Anson doing. Shea Politin is not enough, but about the same. I told us it's a couple of years. Ray, my day, I see that. Thank you so much.
Mr. Dooley. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick introduction of DDC. We are federal contractors, specializing in IT and environmental services. We are wholly owned by the Navajo tribe. Currently, we have 9 subsidiaries, and we have contracts throughout the United States and several foreign countries. And for the record, we are not housing experts, but we do understand the process of contracting, and we will be able to provide additional expertise to the Budget and Finance Committee of the Navajo Nation Council. So if you want, you can call us a silent advisor to the Budget and Finance Committee. That will ensure you all feel like you have an additional ally as you go through this process. And also for the record, we are not seeking contracts for housing, nor are we seeking any of the ARPA financial resources set aside for housing for the Navajo people. As I explained previously, the Net Development Corporation, our expertise is in large-scale federal contracting in the IT and environmental services space. And we're here to assist you all in asking the comprehensive questions, whether that's with our sister enterprises, Navajo Housing Authority, or NECA, Navajo Engineering Construction Authority, or maybe an external company that may be quote unquote knighted, so to speak, to conduct the projects that we developed from this plan that you all are developing. Recently, we met with several members of the Navajo Nation Council who indicated that they would appreciate all the expertise that they can get their hands on when it comes to asking the right questions to ensure the best possible practices are implemented for our people. And that's the primary capacity in which we came to this committee today regarding housing for Nikita Napa. So, we just want to introduce ourselves and say we're here to offer our expertise and help you all formulate questions throughout this process to any partners you may be developing to create more housing. So, we want to make sure we help you ask the tough questions, so to speak, in that process. Mr. Dooley, if you have anything to add, go ahead, sir.
Oh, thank you, Essential. Just to kind of reiterate what Essential said, we are federal contractors, and we do bring expertise in the federal contracting world, and we're just here to provide assistance in any way, shape, or form you need more of the support. Thank you all.
So, if you want to reach out to us, I'll give all of our contact information to Ms. Naka, and she'll distribute it to you all. If you feel like you are unclear in what you should be asking of housing partners, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll do the best we can to answer your questions.
Thank you for the introduction and what your program and enterprise Navajo Nation does own, DDC. And thank you for being here this morning to answer questions from the committee. Budget and Finance Committee, is there any questions? Budget and Finance Committee.
Vice Chair Smith, there's Chair Henio.
Chair Henio, I'll let you have the floor. Go ahead, Shananda.
Shana, thank you, Shananda, Vice Chair Smith, and also Shananda, Budget and Finance Committee. The Native Development Corporation, welcome Mr. O.C. Tom and Mr. Anson Dooley, and by providing us an overview of what DDC is all about. And so when it comes to assisting the nation with housing and looking at the federal contracting side of it, I guess what I'm trying to piece here is how the Native Development Corporation could be our silent advisor when it comes to contracts. Maybe if you could give us a little bit more information of how that might come to play as far as working together. Thank you, Vice Chair Smith.
Thank you, Chair Henio. Any other questions for DDC? Mr. Tom, you have the floor. Questions?
Chair Henio for that question, although Delegate Smith for the floor. The federal contracting process, that's our business 24/7. It's how we generate revenue for the corporation and in turn generate revenue to return back to the Navajo tribe via dividends. So the federal money nandehi, a regulation any auto guidelines and restrictions, we can definitely help you navigate that world of federal reporting, federal guidelines, federal restrictions. I know that Navajo Housing Authority operates on a lot of federal funding, and the majority of that falls under the restrictions and the guise of federal guidelines. We're fully aware of those guidelines, and if you need us to help explain the process better to make sure that you all understand why some of the rules are the way that they are, we can definitely do that. If Navajo Housing Authority presents you perhaps a spending model, we can definitely do a litmus test to make sure that it passes all the necessary precautions and regulations within the federal sector. And we're here to be a partner with Budget and Finance Committee. We're also here to definitely help depopulate all the bureaucracy when it comes to making sure that we all understand our boundaries and in the spirit of with NHA, NECA, and make sure that all the elements of the partnerships are very well thought out. So that's definitely one example, Chair, of making sure that everybody understands the rules of federal guidelines, federal contracting. Because at the end of this, at the end of the ARPA term, what's going to happen is there will be a federal audit, and the Net Development Corporation has participated in federal audits before. We participate multiple times a year to multiple authorities, and we'll be sure to offer our expertise in making sure that the tribe passes those on behalf of any entity that you all might need. So some of our wheelhouse of expertise that we can definitely offer. Specifically construction when it comes to housing, we have Anson Dooley, who has a plethora of housing experience. He was once a construction manager who we have on board, and we definitely rely on his expertise when fielding some of the questions that we have in-house for construction services as well. So we have him at our disposal, and we'll be sure to offer him up to you all. If you want him to live at tribal council, we'll make sure he does that. Chair Smith, Chair Henio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tom, for that response. Committee members, any further questions? Hello. Thank you very much.
That's Delegate Yellowhair, Vice Chairman.
Honorable Yellowhair, Chase. Go ahead. You have the floor.
I just want to say thanks to the representative here before us, Budget Finance Committee. I don't have any questions. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas, each one of you.
Question. Question, Che. Don, I think that's you on the phone. Is that you? Honorable Elmer Begay? I heard someone say.
I'm ready to vote.
Okay, there's no questions. There's no voting on this. We didn't start out with a quorum, and we didn't start out with a motion on the first one. And this is not it's just receiving the report on behalf of A and B. So let's move on to item C, housing plan, presented by Brett Grubbs, CEO of Neville Engineering and Construction Authority. Mr. Grubbs, you have the floor.
Good morning, Chair Henio. Good morning, Vice Chair Smith, and all honorable committee members. We do appreciate being on the agenda this morning and be able to explain some of these costs that we presented. Peggy was able to send out a budget estimate that we prepared based on historical costs and industry standards that we've developed over the years of doing this type of business. We wanted to go through and show you the kind of detail that we break these things out. The bottom line, as you can see, tallies all of it up together, including taxes and bonding, all of it. But when you look at that price at the bottom, realize that there's a tremendous amount of site work that's involved to get that home site ready for the home for construction. So if we start at the top, does everybody have a copy of the estimate, or is everybody looking at an estimate on their screen?
Committee members, do you have the copy of Neville Engineering and Construction Authority estimate? It was sent this morning or sent earlier. Yes, I do. Okay, let's proceed. I think we do.
Great.
We're on the page. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. So in order to start, we've got mobilization in there. That's for NECA to round up the materials and equipment and to go out to the site. There's the big chunk of money there, as you can see, is the site work, water, electrical utilities. Please understand that this is a worst case scenario setup for a location that's well within the confines of the Navajo Nation. It's not near any border towns. We believe that if you're building homes near a border town, or if they're in clusters, these prices can be reduced. However, for budgeting purposes to allocate money for homes to be constructed throughout this ARPA process, we wanted to give you worst case scenario so you could budget accordingly. This site work and water and electricity have to be within a half a mile of main transmission lines. So what we've told NTUA and DCD throughout this ARPA process is that if we're bringing utilities into a home for a bathroom addition, the water line extension must be within a half a mile or it's considered not feasible as far as expenses to construct. So we took that same mindset to talk about this one estimate for a single home construction, a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,350 square foot constructed home. So the site work, water, utilities are all within 1/2 of a mile. That includes the excavation, the driveway, any backfilling of the foundation that's included. That's bringing a water service from a water line to the home. That's also providing a septic system and drain field, and also power. We've got a $30,000 allowance built into there for NTUA's dropping a service and poles within that half a mile. The next item, permits and inspections. That basically is not the home site lease. That permit is for us to obtain a permit to tap the water line to provide the water line to the home, and the inspections are done periodically throughout the home construction to make sure that everyone's following the design. Inspections are done through the foundation process, through the framing process. There's inspections done for the rough-in plumbing, the rough-in electrical, and then there's also inspections as the home becomes trimmed. There's another inspection, basically a final inspection at that point. So there's multiple inspections that are included in that item 35 there. And one of the things that we must take care of, and we wanted to list that separately, is the job site and material security. All of us understand that everyone needs plywood and lumber, and we use it daily. So what we have to do is we have to secure this material from theft and vandalism. So what we'll do, what we anticipate doing, is setting up a small yard that is fenced to where we can protect and house either equipment, materials, and be able to have that real near the home site that we're actually constructing. That price needed to be listed separately so you guys understand that it does cost quite a bit of money for that to even happen nowadays. We've got to have people and vehicles that are monitoring these sites on off hours. So if our construction schedule is from 8 to 4:30, from 5 o'clock in the afternoon all the way through the nighttime, we'll have 2 people performing those security duties throughout that process. One of the things that we added, because we don't know what the volatility is of the market as far as materials, is we put a basic contingency in there, a 10% contingency to cover anything that may be missed as far as price increases or anything that can be added throughout this site work and general security process. So there's a 10% contingency there that's added for the site work. So the total site work is $181,000 with the Navajo Nation tax there, for a grand total of $192,000. This is all based on one single home, within the confines of the Navajo Nation, but not near any border towns or any major services within the Navajo Nation. Moving on down to the home construction itself, we based this on a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,350 square foot home, and based on prices that we've recently used bidding framing packages to other companies, and because of the bathroom construction, we're very familiar with the processes of doing all of this, including the site work and the restrooms through the many years of history that NEC has built. So these prices are coming from our historical data or industry standards or subcontractor pricing. So the sub foundation and utilities, that's basically getting the utilities from the home site up into the home. That's electrical and water, and then actually the drain lines as well for the septic tank and the all of that plumbing as well. The foundation and exterior concrete. This includes all the foundation work that's either going to be a pier system or a slab on grade. We've developed processes through the bathroom additions that in very remote areas we're able to use a pier system because we can hand batch the concrete and mix it without having to get mixer trucks so remotely into the Navajo Nation. If we're near border towns and it's cost effective to order concrete, we can go either way. We anticipate having a design that would allow either or construction. From that point up, the construction varies somewhat. Either it's going to be a crawl space or slab on grade. Most cases would have a crawl space because the crawl space allows for easier construction for the different utilities and for maintenance in the future. But that foundation and exterior concrete is basically $22 a square foot. Then you get into the actual framing and setting the trusses and actually creating the shell of the home. That total per square foot is $47. Then once it's framed and sheeted, we bring in the electrical and the plumbing. Those are the next two items there. The electrical will pull in all wire and get everything strung and pulled to the panel. They won't energize the panel at that point. They just run the wire in there, and then there's inspections to make sure that the wires are run correctly and the panel is not going to be overloaded. They also run inspection on where the switches and outlets are going to be, because this will follow the UB. Although there's not a building code on the Navajo Nation, just like the bathrooms, we build everything per the UBC, and this would be no different. So all outlets must be a certain distance from every corner in the home, switches a certain height. All of that will be determined as the home is constructed. Same thing with plumbing. The plumbing will be roughed in without any fixtures, and it'll just be within the framing to where the inspectors can actually see all the piping, the hot water, cold water, and all drain lines, and make sure that it's up per the UBC and per the codes as well. We've budgeted 10 windows for this 1,350 square foot home. That is, we feel, is adequate for windows. Insulation and drywall, that's basically once the inspections are done on the inside, we will go in and put the insulation in and cover it with the sheetrock and tape and texture it. Once that's done, we got 10 doors. That's 2 exterior doors and interior doors, including closets. And we put a heating allowance in there. The heating allowance is to purchase and install a wood stove and small electrical wall units for the bathroom and the kitchen area. There is not an allowance for a air conditioner or a forced air furnace. What we've done is we've tried to, that can obviously be added, but we're trying to keep the cost down. And the heating allowance is for a wood stove and 2 small wall heaters in the kitchen and the bathroom to keep to reduce the risk of freezing. We did not include an air conditioner at this point. Basically, once everything is set, we'll go back in, interior finishing, paint, trim, and this includes all the basic appliances as well. The refrigerator, the stove, it's got a stackable washer and dryer. All of that is included in that interior finish, painting, and trim. Of the 30, that's $23 a square foot. And usually, I don't want you to look at that and think that that price is ridiculous, because it would be for painting alone, but it does include all the cabinetry, the sinks, all the interior plumbing trim, and then all the basic appliances that I just mentioned. Flooring, all of it will have laminate tongue and groove flooring, and then exterior finish would be paint. And then, like similar to the general site conditions above, we put a 10% building contingency throughout this construction of this home as well. This contingency covers things that may have been missed, or we don't really know, and I don't know if anyone knows, what the costs of goods are going to be 2 years from now. So some of this contingency helps build in risk if the cost of goods continue to rise. Everybody knows what's going on right now federally. The interest rates and everything are going higher each and every day. So it's actually affecting all goods and services across the United States. So these contingencies help us make sure that there's enough money budgeted for future issues that may come up down the road. The bond is included on this price. The taxes are included. There's survey included. But just for the home construction itself, the $284,000, without taxes, that's $210 a square foot to build a 1,350 square foot home. That's a very competitive price for today's industry standards. We do know and have seen prices that are better than that, but that's in clusters. When you can capitalize on your trucking and you can capitalize on your deliveries and build multiple homes in one area. But that we know can be better, but as of right now, we wanted, like I said earlier, to budget for worst case scenario. I wanted to make sure that it has the survey included. So there is a small survey allowance that we've already put in the pricing to make sure that everything drains properly and the home site is within where it needs to be. So that is basically what our costs are showing at today's prices. We know that the market's going to change, but for budgeting purposes for the ARPA, we feel that these are good numbers that people can use to end up in either using them for a cluster or a single installation for one home. Now, if you have any other questions, Vice Chair, I'm ready to answer them. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, sir, for the presentation and the illustration of how much each house would cost us and what the cost is going to incur. Committee members in Osenigi, do you have any questions? I have a
Vice Chair
question. Yes, go ahead. This Chair Henry?
Yes, it's me, Trinidad.
Go ahead, you have the floor, Chair Henry.
Okay, thank you. A lot of good information is being given to the committee here as far as when it comes to housing development. And so just one of the questions I had, and I've posed this back several months ago, was into NECA's position as a builder and how they can assist the Navajo Nation with getting some of these homes built across the nation where there's some issues. And I like the idea of giving us a worst case scenario. It seems like when it comes to housing development, you see a lot of these developers, they make it to where it works. And even on the side of a cliff, they'll build a house and to make it to where it's feasible. But it seems like here we want everything to be so perfect. Flat land, we have to have water nearby, a road, and power, and so we can start building. Well, you know that Navajo Nation has a lot of different landscapes with its own unique challenges. And therefore, we have to adapt and to make do with what we have that's available to us when it comes to housing development. One case in point is Untitled Chapter. And they've been wanting for housing development for a long, long, long time. But then again, if you look at the landscape within their chapter, there's a lot of hills and valleys and uneven ground. And so just listening to what NECA has to provide, it seems like they might be able to assist a chapter like Untitled Chapter in getting the housing development moving. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment there, Chair Henio. Committee members, any other questions or comments in regards to the report by NECA? If not, I have a question and a concern. Thank you for this presentation on behalf of the question I have is the cost on each of the houses that's going to be regarding the Navajo Engineering Construction Authority's, estimate. And the cost is like $493,613.91. In today's market, I guess that is the going rate. Is Veterans is making houses, and they're saying that their house is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of almost $300,000. I don't want to quote that, but it's around $200 some odd thousand to the home. If NECA is going to be tasked to do this, I guess the one big issue would be making sure that the construction site is within a half mile of the nearest utility. And if it's not within the nearest utility, then that cost estimate will go even higher. Is that what I'm understanding? Could you kind of elaborate on the performance bonds too? Because you say payment and performance bonds are included. How does that bond system work with this cost? And then my question on number 60 on the home construction for the 3-bedroom and 1-bathroom. It says windows, $10 each. Is that what it says, or is that? I know windows are very expensive. And that's basically the most costly, they say, when you're building a house. I remember when I was in the market for getting my house built, everything else was affordable, but when I went to look at windows, that price tag shot even higher than the rest of the materials. But here it says per window is $10 and 605, which would be $6,050. How many windows would that be? I guess you could divide that and find out. X equals. But that's my question. And then the number 80, interior finishing, painting, trimming includes cabinets and basic appliances. Is that going to be like generic cabinets? I know that veterans did help me out on cabinets, and the cost at that point in time was reasonable, but I can imagine cabinets nowadays, the cost of that is, especially if you get them custom made or if you get them to your liking. If you just get generic type of cabinets with the what they call it, particle board, or and then it's just painted, and it's just a cabinet that's furnished like that. Is that the type of cabinets that one will be getting? And then the other one too is you talked about the crawl space. What's the depth of that? Is it 2 feet? Is it 1 foot? Or is it 2.5 feet or 3 feet? Because if they do the crawl space, you can put, do you put insulation in that, in the crawl space, like underneath, what do they call those, subfloor or the trusses? Not the trusses, that's the roof. The floor joists and stuff like that underneath there, do you put the insulation in there? Is that the, because when you insulate underneath there, you have insulation on the bottom, the side, and on top, which really keeps your house warm in the winter and keeps your house cool in the summer. That's my question. Well, thank you.
Do I have the floor again, Vice Chair?
Yes, you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Smith. To cover Chair Henio's comments, you know, NECA does provide a special service to where we are used to moving into remote locations and doing things that are off grid, you might say. What we're talking about doing is, if you're not within a certain distance of the water line, there's also the possibility of putting a cistern tank in lieu of a water line extension. So in certain cases, you know, the water line might not be there, but the power might be there. So we could put a cistern tank and then drain field and septic tank, so the home would not be tied to a water system. Preferably, everybody would like to be tied to a permanent water source, but that is an option. So you're exactly right. We do offer that type of service because of our ability to move to remote locations. We're very familiar with all the different landscapes across the Navajo Nation, and a lot of our crews know exactly where the rock is, where the blow sand, the clay. We've got so much history. Next year will be our 50-year anniversary, as a matter of fact. We've got so much history that we can design and have things designed for each geographical area on the nation, and then adapt the construction to fit that. So that's a very good point, and we do bring that to the table, sir. Vice Chair Smith, when you're looking at the cost breakdown for the veterans versus our cost, I don't think the veterans are including in their cost, they're including the cost of the site development possibly. So where you're saying that our price is like $200,000 higher than theirs, if you look at the top of our estimate, our site work and utility construction is approximately 192,000. So that could be a difference in the cost when we're looking at it. So when we go out and we have a design and we're contracted to build these things, we will give a firm estimates, and the firm estimates, that way we make sure that budget and finance and whoever else is looking at it is comparing apples to apples. So right now I can't tell you exactly what their 300,000 includes. I'm assuming that doesn't include any earthwork or any utilities to the site. I could be wrong, but I just for comparison's sake, we would want to be able to know exactly where there is. So again, ours is broken out into two different costs, the site development and then the home construction. So there's two different things, and you're exactly right. The half a mile, when we started working with NTUA over a year ago with these bathrooms, we had to develop a stopping point where the cost is not prohibitive to run a water line that far for one single home. So we stopped at a half a mile. So anything over a half a mile, the price starts getting higher than it needs to be, and we would switch over and do a cistern tank at that point. So the half a mile is kind of the cutoff there to where we could do a cistern tank if it's too remote and we don't have the ability to attach it to. But that half a mile was just something we agreed on as far as a rule of thumb to start our pricing process. It was 1/2 a mile and under. If there aren't water lines there, we can definitely look at a cistern tank to where that home would have fresh water. The only problem would be it would have to be hauled, and we'd have to make sure that they could still have power. A home this size, it would be very difficult to put a solar system on it compared to what we've been putting through the CARES Act. The CARES Act, the solar units weren't powerful enough to run a heater and the refrigerator and the entire structure because there's too many amps that are pulled by the heaters. So for the homes of this size, we strongly recommend that they would be tied into the electrical grid. You asked about the bond. NECA bonds all of its work, and basically what that means, Vice Chair, is we put a bond in there that if NECA defaults, if something happens to NECA and they can't finish the work that they're contracted to do, the bonding company will hire a company similar to NECA to come in and finish it. So the client, which would be the Navajo Nation, would never be hurt for lack of the product being produced. So it's basically an insurance system that if something happened to NECA, the bonding company would go out and hire another company to come in and finish the work. That's how the bond system works. We've had to do it for the bathrooms. We have to do it for our highway construction. We've done it for all of our water line construction. Very few projects have we not had to require a bond. It does add cost. Our bond rate is 1%, which is lower than the industry standard. So we're proud of that fact because we've never defaulted. So our bonding company has never had to hire anybody. So they keep our rate as low as possible, which is 1% of the total cost of the construction. And then as the windows, you're exactly right. Windows are very expensive, and wanted to explain, there's 10 each, sir. There's 10 each at $605 a piece. So that's where you get your extension of $6,050. So to purchase them and install them, we got 10 per home at a cost of $605 a piece for an extension of $6,050. They are exactly where you can spend a lot of money on the window package for a home. The cabinets and the interior finishing, and it includes the basic appliances. Right now, we buy cabinets that are pre-built from Home Depot and Lowe's for IHS, and those cabinets run anywhere from, depending on where the lumber market is, they run from anywhere from $2,500 up to $3,200 per set. We're doing those through IHS as we speak. They're not custom-made cabinets, but they are above grade. They're not all particle board. In other words, I completely understand. They're not going to be. It's not a press board cabinet system that you're getting. These are above standard grade cabinets that are produced and purchased through Home Depot and Lowe's, and that's how we get them. But they're a medium grade cabinet. They're not the super high end expensive ones, but they're not the very cheap particle board ones either. They're in the middle of the price breakdown there. We did include a stove with an oven in it and a refrigerator and a stackable washer and dryer. So that's all of the appliances that were included in the price. And I apologize. I'm a little under the weather today, guys. I apologize for my voice going in and out. And you're right. The crawl space, it depends. The depth of it will depend a lot on the natural grade and terrain that the home is built upon. So sometimes you can build a pier system to offset some of the earthwork costs if there's a pretty good exaggerated slope. So on one side of the home, it might only be a foot, but on the other side of the home, it might be 18 inches to 2 feet, depending on the natural grade. But what that allows us to do is to go in and attach all the plumbing and the drain, bring the water in, the electrical in, and after that's in, you're exactly right. What they do is we will insulate in between the joists, the floor joists, and put that bad insulation in there. So you'll have, on a crawl space situation, you would have insulation in the floor, in the walls, and then in the ceiling. So it'd be all four walls, the ceiling, and the floor. And you're exactly correct. That does keep a lot of heat in there. But there would be insulation in that between the joists and the crawl space installation of those homes. And we wouldn't want to go too high for the crawl space just because it's a waste of material, but we would probably, I want to say an average would be probably 2 feet. Some cases in extreme could be up to 3 feet. In some places it may only be 16 inches, but I would say a good average to use would be a 24-inch crawl space, just not knowing exactly what the terrain allows. Hopefully that answered your questions, Vice Chair Smith and Chair Henio. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Grubbs. We appreciate the response back. Committee members, any other questions?
Vice Chair, it's Elgin Begay.
Go ahead and give you the floor. Honorable Begay, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
yes, we can.
Okay, to the other members of the Budget and Finance Committee. I have a question. Understanding that it's NECA that's doing reporting looking at the documents that you provided to us. So I'm looking at the general site condition and security. So let me start from there. You know that this for you to bring your own trucks and maybe the materials. You bring the mobilization, so it's gonna cost $10,000. Bringing all that to the site, and then to clear, I guess you're gonna have to clear the whole 1 acre is a site work, and to bring in the utility onto the site, which will be $141,000, and the permits and then the inspection, I guess, to make sure that all the clearance are made, and you know, that's what I guess that's what the permit and inspection is. Then the job site material for $9,000 that you can have to fence it around, or you can hire somebody to be a security there. And then the site utility contingency is $16,000. So with all this, $181,000. That's you. There's nothing's gonna be. Just like you're clearing that whole area. 1 acre. It's gonna cost $181,000 just by doing that. You know, just you can not see actual no construction yet. Nothing. No stem walls. No excavation for footing or anything like that. That's the way I see it. I'm not sure though. But back to the construction of the foundation. I'm looking at yours. I think the price that you gave us is for 1,350,000 square foot of a home for 3-bedroom. Can you give me the square footage? The cost of the square footage that this will all involve in it. That'll be my first question. And then is this gonna be concrete slab, or is it gonna be wooden floor? And then also the framing, is it gonna be wood, or is it gonna be metal studs? And also, is it gonna be for the trusses? Is it gonna be for flat ceiling? It's not gonna be vaulted or anything like that. And also I'm looking at the electrical. So all the electrical is gonna be like up to the inside, all the standard all the outlets. Is it gonna come down to where the meter loops? Is it gonna be included to that, ready to connect to the service line from the NTA, and down to the installation drywall. So up to the drywall, it should be all finished, ready to move in, and then the flooring would be. Is it gonna be like tiles, or is it gonna be wooden floors, or they have a choice between that right now? If it can be like more like that, if you want a variety in it, like a wooden floor, then go into a different kind of a tile. Do you have a choice options right there, and down to the cabinets? Do you have I know cabinets is something that can be really cheap and some can be expensive, but the expensive one is it can last a long time because of the hardware that you can be putting on, and then exterior finish. What is the exterior finish? Is it gonna be stucco? Is it gonna be the one that they use right now, is it gonna be just the regular smart sidings, or is it gonna be like where that those lap pins that you can put it on, and to finish all that? And can you explain more to that? See what you were looking at, that $493,000, how much it's gonna cost for a home. So that would be my whole question. The Vice Chair Smith, several more questions.
Vice Chair, may I answer?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you, Shada. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Begay. Let me try to clarify these things for you. They're very good questions, and you deserve the right to know what goes in there. Mobilization is to get exactly what you're saying. It's to get our equipment there and all of the building materials that we're going to use there. Now, when you see the site work of $141,000, you got to understand that there's a budget in there of $30,000 to get the electrical over to the home. Okay. And then part of that as well is $20 per foot for water line extension up to a half a mile. So that's also included in there. And we will clear it, we'll grade it, we'll build a driveway, and the excavation for the home and the footers, if required, will be included in that. So it does look like it is a lot of money. It doesn't look like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But you will be able to see the excavation for the footing, and the utilities will be brought all the way into the home site where the actual floor plan will be constructed. So your earthwork for the clearing and grubbing is taken care of. The earthwork for the excavation for the foundation will be included, and the backfill for the foundation is included in that as well. So there's more work in there than meets the eye when just looking at that price, because the water and the electrical are the two biggest items to bring into the site. Those are the ones that are the largest dollar amounts for that. You mentioned the security fencing. The security fencing will be NECA employees that will construct that. We will put up temporary fencing until the project is complete, and then we'll take it down. But those will be NECA employees that are constructing the fencing. And what we normally do when we moved for a roadway project, or for if we're building a cluster of bathrooms, we'll check with the chapter and we'll try to hire all of our security guards from the local area, because our security guards are familiar with the area. They don't have to travel long distances to go to work. So we pull from the local labor force to hire security and our labor force when we move to these communities throughout the Navajo Nation. So it's a good chance that security guards and then the labor force to build the fences will be local labor from whatever chapter we'll be in. The square foot cost of the house to build the home for people to move in without the insurance and without the taxes, without the earthwork, is $210 a square foot for 1,350 square foot of floor space. That's 3 bedrooms and 1 bath, sir. And I mentioned earlier what we would propose to do is in certain areas throughout the Navajo Nation, the soils, all of us know that there's different kinds of soils throughout the Navajo Nation. We would have 2 different foundations basically designed. One to accommodate if the soil has got a lot of clay in it, or if there's soils that are ready to build on. So we would have a slab on grade designed, and then we would have a pier system designed. So that would be depending on the soils and the analysis, that we don't want to have to do a bunch of over excavation and import material. So that just adds cost when you have to import material. So we would switch at that point and go to a pier system and build it off of piers to where you could insulate the crawl space in between the joists and build from there. So that we'd have a wooden floor in certain instances and then a slab on grade in others. I also mentioned earlier that if we're building near border towns or with near a community on the Navajo Nation that has a concrete batch plant, it might be cost effective to go to all slab on grade. But we'll have the opportunity by doing the pier system that we can actually build it off of piers if we can't get the access to concrete trucks there cost effectively. All the framing that we've priced to date is all wood. All of it is all wood frame, 2x6 exterior, 2x4 interior, and will be sheeted with OSB. The trusses will be gable trusses, and the gable trusses will be designed for wind and snow loads. Depending on where we're at in wheat fields and up in that area and other communities across the nation, the snow load will be greater. So we'll have trusses designed specifically for where the home is located. And you're right, all of the electrical that you see there is all switches, boxes, Romex, all pulled to the panel from all the fixtures. The two heaters I mentioned, all will be pulled to the panel and tied to the panel, and then NTUA will have to energize the panel. The flooring that you see is a budget for either a tile or laminate flooring. So we might be able to have the kitchen to have tile floor and then laminate flooring other places. So that $11 a square foot is to budget for either or flooring or a combination of the two. The cabinets that we use for IHS, like I said, they're medium grade cabinets. They're not the extremely expensive ones, but they're very durable, and we have had no complaints from the Navajo residents that we've installed them in. They've been holding up really well, and to this point, I haven't had anybody tell me that they're poorly designed. The hardware on those cabinets is very good, because that is one of the first places that fails. So that's one of the things that our warehouse has really inspected and vetted a lot of different cabinet manufacturers, and we found a manufacturer that Home Depot deals with, and we've bought a tremendous amount of cabinets from them because they're very durable. And then the siding, it is painted smart siding. So it goes up rather quickly. It's got a lap on the end of it, so it seals it. But that is going to be a painted siding and soffit. So your soffit and siding would be constructed out of the smart siding, the material that's ready for paint, and we'd put that in there, and both the soffit and the exterior walls would be painted. I hope that answers your questions, Honorable Begay. I can answer more if there are any out there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Grubbs, for the response to Honorable Elmer Begay. Committee members, any further questions? If not, I have a couple.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. Thank you very much for bringing this about house. The complete house is what he's talking about. My brother, Elmer Begay. Is this a Colorado code that we're talking about? And also, there's one area that my grandson just talked about it, chairman, vice chairman, about those cabinets. Yes, some of those cabinets are just a press board, like paper press board. If a real house is made out of real wood, is this what we're talking about too? And just my questions, vice chairman, to yeah.
Thank you for that question. Committee members, any other further questions? If not, I have Chair Henio. Chair Henio, go ahead. I'll let you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smith, and thank you for chairing the meeting here. This question here is, and turnkey developments, and how NICA will be looking at this concept of a turnkey development, and to build homes at the same time, from there, and I turn it over to families that qualify for however they qualify. But just want to get the pros and cons of a turnkey development, and from NICA's perspective. Thank you.
Chair Henio, that's a question that you're posing to NECA, right?
Oh.
Committee members, any other questions?
I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead with the follow-up question.
Thank you for the response. And I think my second question to all this is I didn't see any wastewater. It's just going to be I know that you're talking about the water line, bring the water line to the house, but the septic tank is included in this one with the infiltrators. That will be my first question, and then the second one is I know you mentioned about and I didn't get if it's gonna be concrete flooring, concrete slab that they're gonna be building, and to that is out in the Telecom area right now. I know that any homes that we build within the my chapter area, we get concrete truck from Winslow and Holbrook, and it costs a lot to bring that down and into the reservation. Right now, since you're working with IHS, there's a concrete plant that is temporarily being established for the construction of the hospital there. Is there a way that we could work with the construction there, work with IHS or working with the Winslow Healthcare Center? If we could maybe help out during this time to keep the concrete plant there. Is it allowable, or is it workable? So that's my question. Thank you.
Back to committee members. Any other questions before I turn the floor back over? I'm not hearing any, but I have a couple of questions, Mr. Grubbs, along with the Budget and Finance Committee. Number one is blueprint. I know that's a costly document, and it seems like we're going to be doing cookie cutters, and that blueprint will be utilized for the 3-bedroom. The reason why I ask that is some folks may not need a 3-bedroom. Some folks may require or request a 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom. Is that also considered in your proposal to build houses? The other one too is lastly is the warranty. There's usually a warranty provided for the homeowner, and I know Arizona, we usually try to follow the Arizona law, which is like 8 years if it's still in place for warranty for any manufacturer's defects, and it's covered under the warranty on behalf of the houses that are built. And what do these houses look like? I know that you are talking about frame houses, and it sounds to be a one bathroom and 3 bedrooms is a pretty good sized house for folks that need houses. But I was thinking some folks may need a 2 bedroom or a 1 bedroom, depending on their family size or their needs. Is that going to be considered in this? And I know that'll bring the cost down too, on behalf of constructing a square footage. Thank you. I'll turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Grubbs.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Let me go through all these responses here. Mr. Begay, Honorable Begay, they're not built per Colorado codes. They're built per the UBC, which is the Universal Building Code, and the International Building Code. So these homes will be built to pass any inspection in any major metropolitan area, because we've heard from people that it's very difficult and then almost impossible for families to obtain insurance on the Navajo Nation. So we want to construct these homes to a certain quality to where that would help people convince insurance companies that these homes are built with quality materials and quality workmanship. And the cabinets that we are using are real wood. They're not particle board. They're very durable, and they've been very they've lasted a very long time for the people that we've installed them for. And so the cabinets are made out of real wood. And the comment that Chair Henio on the turnkey process, if I understood the question correctly, you would like to know what the turnkey would be for a family to move into one of these homes. And from when we break ground to turning over the home to the family, we're assuming right now 4 months. So that's from the utilities and the site work all the way through handing the family the keys to an operating home would be 4 months is what we have figured in this right now. Moving on to Honorable Yellowhair's comments, the wastewater and septic tank and infiltrators, that is covered in the site work and utilities item on the general site conditions on the top part of that estimate. I apologize. I should have said water and wastewater on that estimate, but the site work does include the septic tank installation, the infiltrators, and the excuse me, and the backfill of that. And then for the concrete slab, we want to have 2 designs for the foundation, as I mentioned earlier. If it's cost effective to have a concrete floor, we'll do that. And we will definitely take advantage of where batch plants are located throughout the Navajo Nation. If there's a batch plant that's located near a home construction, it's in our best interest to go ahead and get a slab on grade and pour that when it's readily available. I talked about the pier system, and the pier system is in very remote locations where concrete trucks are hard to get to. So that is definitely an opportunity to take advantage of that cost savings when those batch plants are close. And to your comments, Vice Chair Smith, we definitely will develop blueprints. Right now, we base this on a worst case scenario, so we would allocate enough money. So if there's people out there that need 2 bedroom and 1 bedroom, what that would do would be we would actually develop an estimate for each one of those, And you're exactly right. The sizes are going to depict the cost savings. If there's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, it's definitely going to be a little bit smaller, and there's going to be cost savings for that as well. But we anticipate exactly what you said, probably all the way from a 1-bedroom to a 3-bedroom, and have 3 different blueprints, and each one of them will have a cost associated with it. And that will also take care of the 2 different types of foundations as well. The warranty, as what we've done throughout NECA's history, is we've provided, depending on the client, our roadways, our bathroom additions, our water lines, we have a 12-month warranty of all workmanship and materials. So if anything goes wrong with our workmanship or materials within that 12 months, it's repaired or fixed by NECA. So that's the warranty that we've been providing. There could be different warranty processes. I think the 8-year warranty is on manufactured homes. It's a little different process than what a stick-built home would be from us, but that's the typical warranty that we've been providing the Navajo Nation. I hope I've covered everyone's questions, and if you need me to elaborate, I can do that. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Grubbs, for the response back to the committee members. Committee members, any further questions or follow-up questions? I think we have
Vice Chair Smith, is Chair Henio.
Chair Henio, go ahead. I'll recognize you. You have the floor.
This one thing is what I'd like to hear from is Mr. Boonigman, who's with the young Navajo professional that works over with NECA. And I'd like to get his take on what we're talking about here and what ideas that he has, as we know we need to advance our young Navajo professionals to these type of conversations where they could give us their insight from their expertise and their professional education. And so I'd like to hear from Mr. Boonigman if he's available.
Goshin, Chair Henio. Committee members, any other questions before I turn the floor back over? I'm not hearing any. My question, Shenandoah Senegi, is we have the ARPA money, and the reason why we're talking about this leadership is because I understand that housing is going to be delayed. And we were discussing this, and we were trying to strategize on how we could get these houses built ASAP. And NECA is one of them. DDC was another one, but they're not asking for any additional funding or asking any ARPA funds. We were looking at different entities and also NHA. My question to NECA, and I know NECA, I said this over at Twin Arrows, we need to open the door for other contractors to come in and not to overtake our enterprises or exclude our enterprises. If enterprises can do the job and get these houses out there as soon as possible, that'd be a blessing. But my question to Mr. Grubbs and NECA is, due to the blueprints not being developed, due to the area, and due to the funds that are available through the ARPA, and let's say legislation drops and says, okay, we're going to give X number of dollars to NECA. Are you capable of providing 110 chapters, the number of houses that may be requested from each chapter? Like, say, maybe just a ballpark figure. I could be wrong, but let's say 110 chapters. One chapter is asking for maybe anywhere in the neighborhood of 100 homes to 150 homes, and multiply that times 110. And we got only a time frame of utilizing this money
is that realistic, or do you need us to at least maybe change the amend the law so that we could also solicit contractors? Because I know that building a house is relying on subcontractors too. You need to hire carpenters, masonry, plumbers, HVAC people, and then, of course, those that are detailing, like painters and stuff like that. So it does take a big teamwork to get a house going, and I know that resources aren't as readily available as if we were in the county or state. So that's my question and concern, because people are like the wind last night. I was listening to that, and the wind was talking to me saying, get those houses, get them houses out there, get them houses out there. We're not waiting. The elements of what Mother Nature is like. We're not waiting. You guys have the money. Get those houses built. Get quality houses out there. And I foresee quality houses, but it's not embarrassing to ask for help. It's not embarrassing to ask for any help. So that's my question, my concern, Mr. Grubbs. And then I'll turn the floor back over to you. Thank you.
I have another question too.
Vice Chair Smith, that's a very good question, and you're exactly right. Can NECA do 110, all the houses for 110 chapters? By no means, sir. Not in the time frame that they've got. So we have the ability to manage, and just like we did for the bathroom additions, we brought in 9 subcontractors to help us. So we would be soliciting large subcontractors that can provide bonding and insurance to help us with this home construction. We do believe if there are clusters of homes, we could probably get some subcontractors to move in and do, so many homes in a certain area, and then it's more appealing to them if they can come in and build the clusters than it is a single family home. But we'll be definitely looking for subcontracted help throughout this process. And by no means are we saying that we can handle all of it, but we have the ability to manage it. So if we try to put it all out to bid, it actually delays the process even longer. And what it does is it builds additional cost into the process. So if we were able to do this construction, we would run everything and basically manage the subcontractors and do all the inspections and make sure they're following the same guidelines that NECA does. But you're exactly right. The number of the sheer size and amount. I don't know how much money I think it was 50 or 40 or 50 million dollars, and don't quote me on that. I'm just going from memory. But if the ARPA is 40 or 50 million, based on this, we're looking at roughly 100 homes. So even at 100 homes, we would definitely be in there asking for some help with subcontractors. And as far as Chair Henio, I do know that Boo is on the phone call, and I'm sure he'd be more than willing to give his take on this entire process as well. So I can turn the floor over to Boo at this point and get his thoughts as well. Thank you. Are you there, Boo? Vice Chair, let me try to text Boo and see if he's on the line. He's at a function today as well, so I can text him and see if he's... Oh, he's there. Okay, good.
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
le isen stand I hotel le naida kirigi do sidit sa
That was
Mr. Nygren.
Chair Heniel's question.
Chair Henio, could you repeat the question for Bo?
Vice Chair Smith, I just wanted to get his take, maybe on what we're talking about here as housing development on the Navajo Nation, and how we could utilize the funds that we currently have, or the ones that we are currently sitting on, which is the ARPA funds, and how we can build homes on the nation. And just kind of want to get his take on this whole conversation, maybe in a short and sweet, to the point manner. That way, we can. It's already 12:30, so I just wanted to hear from him, our young Navajo professional who works with NECA. That's all.
Agushi, Chair Henio, thank you for reiterating that. You have the floor, Shinanda.
Yara te hanot in the beso because the na inat ani the na senigido kwa na hatini haletola hawan near pesos and nesto benahadot asto esteda dos nisto the kushina the near hawan benahata to the peso arogine tegi arpa the nenigi le the nebe bekato was to skinso be to nesigi to ban sa kesigi jodi edo peso do hit order yego gas begin a stones the nahlen jen le ani le not ani in x8 and lenigi ya dust here go edi peso Washington de no tagi dito but the has lando dit or she did or instant ne a ko diker ho ban sa kesigi edo yo begin a stone the nahlen alla de nahot igi e alla at nahlen to hodo bayada asti do ben hat agi to shi Hela hawan panda hito nesto haila da bagan pes bahasa an kuila hawan budget da result asto sede do nesto si yego hawan yete dan lenigi hajo pe do haila da bagan hajo ba da hausen no si akhot o e donan tadan halen chudikat enni nekhe large da satanigi neka yen kesna hasne di e hawan asa an dot as honela bahelle honela e tho Toya da dot sito based chi da dot ito where hawan Kaya has anigi had a dot nitigi e to hard shins gare hawan clan dot aligi ebenia where dare near he credo had a diga e hoto ban so des kezo di bahilenigi na hasnil shidi hodoban sis keso e di aita yego bohone tan halen cho aita ashi di bahilenigi bahozinago hobakagi at in the one hadal neho a 500,000 hodo media a ko 500,000 kuila hawan bendo nesigi hajo nel kago a 40 million hodo need go a 80 hawan ni so biga at in the never ka hotsogi hone lago hawan do ne hada shida bagan sashi aida keya bahata so sada do khan keya bahat hada has tota e digi hajo baho zindo eliago e di jodi e peso thinso bena anish eko ani John hin nan kede kid hit ola ban sida kesti hawan ta dozni jo khodo san kitchen nani anigi e yega bohonetsa to khode jo ebini ye neka elia hawan do kindo alla hawan binda to nish thinda binda to nishigi bini na jon hin kha de te to bahilnigi jo sa da no e ayu ya das ti honela hawan bahilna ta do nishigi yo ya das kin hedo hodani te ti honela bahilne to dan kidi ni ishi bini na che ban sida kes bini ye jo satena edikitle hawan la kuila bahilen dot as kuila yida bagan kuila yan ta altahigi built hawan da do nisgi trotishi enal sosin kitche huil yaigi shi to banina che ban sida kes to le di de hard shi hawan da to nisgi bini na che do le hot to she so jo sha so daily no do niki has see the len ke do khodo a kha deal was den ye khodo na so sin kha deal ya do leder dan kedis kedo hawan hoden do ne kuila ba do le ji hun zago shagan disi beni na so na he do le to beni na heder nan kedis kedo shi di to hawan do ni to di to hadal ya ta do ni do le e shi to beni na beni ya ado she in so si yego bla ho bon ne za ne ze tin hawan ni so da jo dina khaje di peso be no December 2026 I down hode des kin ko na din shla hawan na ni so dina khaje da na din di da jo base was an na din hollo ishi base was an at ende abbe vidne ya da ishi eda benina chaban za case shi to ni so ba just case ado ashin hon so ye do le to ya ni credential to ade cash mista bitna hol jishi gishi eshi beni na anada to don kenan so hot edi si yego na nation tas go peso chidar dot asigi halet ol etesno teneva kha to wasigi e shahat na to ton credential ashin hon so do le shinan ta da na senegi shahat.
So Shane, thank you very much for that. It's good to hear your voice, and Merry Christmas to you too, Shananda and Kennedy. Back to the committee members. Any other further questions?
Is Delegate again?
Honorable Gay, I'll let you have the floor. Shada, go ahead.
Yeah, Nana. I don't need to do Shada Haji so Mr. Nigrin. I don't know. It's has a middle there, but go back to the question. If you could be hiring some local contractors in the area of like the southwest part of the reservation, have some general contractors that are in the area. What would be the amount of their bonding, the insurance, that bonding that they would have? What's what kind of bonding would they have? How much worth of it bonding that we have to be a contractor in NECA? And then right now, like I mentioned before, that Telecom has already have the land selected. It's already withdrawn, and the utilities are on the side. All we need is we want a developer to come in and start making homes for elderlies and also for veterans. How would you help us to be a developer to that? I know that it's going to cost. If you can put about what would be the best number of home if it's going to be cluster for where homes that's going to be there, like the hot NXA setups. So how many homes will be a good price to say that that the mobilizations can be easier, and then the sites is going to be even the site development. It's going to be just one person can, the one whole design can do the whole site planning for that, which would be a cost savings for if you're building a home way out in the rural area, and then another one this way it's going to cost more. But to make it more cluster within in the area of Telecom, and then the batch plant is going to be there. So how much would you give? Would you give us a figure how much it's going to cost? Like if it's going to be more than 10 homes or more than 20 homes to do that and go with the Telecom area, would you give us that kind of maybe a price to that, a cost estimate? Yeah, definitely a question, Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Committee members, any further questions or follow-up before I turn the floor back over to Ms. Grubbs?
This is Delegate Yellowhair.
Honorable Delegate Yellowhair, go ahead with your question.
NECA talking about house. As I remember, I'd like to bring this to attention to my colleagues. Okay, this is in reference to a judicial branch. Years and years, decades, they need a house, a courthouse for a judge and also a prosecutor. Even in the prosecutor, they can't go up to Tuba city areas. They public and title that ahora. That the name of judge, you're not relocate now. The prosecutor, even in the all case and dismiss it, prosecutor doing or dismiss it. If we use this American Rescue Plan Act we need about at least 20 houses because there's 10 sites at district court. So it's going to cost like $10 million. Just what a rough estimate cost, like $500,000 house. If this house is going to be make like a Colorado code, really, I think it on some judicial. Even in other cases, I load the net of the Kato, the net of Yachon, but this is not contact with us. All the DO should be that Johnny, in this case, chaired or vice chaired or my colleagues, Budget Finance Committee, if we could take advantage on this EPRA fund, I think this will qualify to use this money, to allow this money to build a house. It wants a house. This year, I think, because President Gator support it 100%. Thank you, Vice Chairman, Honorable Raymond Smith. Thank you, Ani.
Thank you for that positive note on behalf of getting the ARPA funds utilized. Chair Henio, since you're listening on board and I'm facilitating the meeting here, I just wanted to say that the reason why we had this leadership meeting is we're having work session tomorrow, and this is regarding the legislation 0257-21, and in there has earmark of housing. How do we incorporate this good idea of utilizing NECA to start houses out there? Because it sounds like they can subcontract out, and it sounds like they can get some houses built out there, and they've already, I guess, utilized their expertise in helping out with bathroom additions. And I've seen bathroom additions being done in the general area. One was health area, and I appreciate their help in that. And because that was Q84 is one of the major projects that's in IHS. But Chair, just how do we ensure that we can solicit this? Because CPMD is kind of like heading this whole thing up, and they've already earmarked so many dollars for it. And I don't want to see this legislation not include our enterprises that can do these kind of jobs and get these houses out there as soon as possible. Shenandoah, I'd hate to see it get tabled or get referred back. We need to move quickly on that ARPA funds, and that's going to be a 2-day task tomorrow. Speaking all on not just housing, but also power lines and things of that nature. But for now, we're talking about housing. Is it wise that we talk about maybe a subcommittee for housing within BNF and saying, Chair Henio, I know you're a little bit under the weather. I don't mean to get you on the line to elaborate deeply in this, but it's just a thought on how we can work this out, Shenandoah. Committee members, any further questions for NECA? I'm not hearing any, so NECA, you have the floor, and then I guess I can get back with Chair Hanu after NECA.
Vice Chair Smith, this is Delegate Crotty. May I ask a question?
Good afternoon, Delegate Crotty. Yes, you can go ahead and proceed. You have the floor.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Shaz. We had a windstorm out here, so our power was just restored. So thank you, committee and colleagues, for continuing the discussion. Vice Chair, I just, in terms of, I know our component was really like, how do we finance housing or housing manufacturing? If that's been part of the conversation, I could just listen. But what I would like to know is there opportunity to start developing more housing manufacturing here on Navajo? So it sounds like there's conversations for Tuba City and Chinle, but in terms of the communities that we represent here on Budget and Finance, we would like to expand and provide more housing manufacturing opportunities. Has that been discussed, or is there a way maybe in our next conversation we discuss how to invest in that type of industry so that to meet the housing need, to provide jobs, and just to build our communities back better? Thank you, Vice Chair, for that guidance.
Thank you, Honorable Crotty. That's a perfect good question on behalf of where we're going with this. NHA did their presentation, and also DDC did their presentation, and now we're with NECA. There was no in-depth discussion on future talk about housing, infrastructure, or construction, or the question that you posed on having a facility to manufacture houses within the Navajo Nation. I think that would be our next step if we do have another leadership meeting on how we can look into that and get that going. I think that was one of the main topics that we're concerned about, because we have our various enterprises that can do so much, and we have so little time and so many requests that could be coming in, and how do we facilitate that, and how do we generate more houses for our folks out there that need houses? And you know how the weather was yesterday, last night, and thank goodness it's now calm. So that's where we're at with this, Honorable Crotty. Back to Mr. Grubbs. There was some questions posed. You have the floor.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smith. Back to Honorable Begay, talking about how many homes it would take to take advantage of mobilization and building homes in a cluster. In reality, any number greater than one is going to start help reducing the price. But to take full advantage of it, a minimum of 4 homes, we believe, would be a breaking point to be significant cost savings, because your supervision can manage all 4 homes in one area. The trucks are all delivering to one area. 4 is a very standard number. If anything more than 4, and we can actually build and construct them faster, because we can have each home within the cluster in a different phase, and we can have our crews and subcontractors move through there, and instead of building one home in 4 months, say we build 6 homes in 5 months, because of that leapfrog effect, and we can move through the process and not have to travel. So anything more than 1 home is a distinct advantage, but truly the best number is 4 homes and higher. We can take advantage of that. And then what Honorable Crotty brought up, Honorable Crotty, we've been talking about what we can do the fastest. The fastest way for us to start serving the Navajo people that need homes is to get out there and start stick building them on site. I do believe that there's enough need and enough quality people that you could open a manufactured housing, because the housing market is never going to go away on the Navajo Nation. So, but we were talking about what we could do during that process. We should be building stick homes and trying to develop a manufacturing facility. We've had things mentioned about property here in NECA. We've got a very large site here at NECA. Eugenia Charles Newton, Honorable Newton, brought up the fact that there's a property within Shiprock, a large facility that would allow people to work 12 months a year indoors. So there is some opportunity there, and I think it's well worth looking into. However, to get things started and to provide homes, it would be to build homes concurrently while we're trying to set up the manufactured home process. And there could be subcontractors out there that would come in and help us for a while, and then phase them out. But those discussions need to be had. And I'm not familiar with Chinle and Tuba City, but we have just barely started talking about some opportunities here in the Shiprock area, and I still believe that they're worth looking into, and NECA will do whatever we can to help in that process. If there's no other questions, I want to say thank you for taking the time to visit with NECA, myself and Boo. As you know, we're here to support and do what we can for the Navajo Nation, and we're going to assist in any way we can. We'll be on the call tomorrow to answer questions if they come up, and I appreciate.
Mr. Grubbs, thank you for that. I appreciate that, and appreciate the time, and Mr. Boo too for being on the line and listening, and those that are listening on behalf of the Budget and Finance Committee's leadership meeting and the endeavors trying to get our houses or
I think we lost Vice Chair Smith on this call. Chair Hinio.
Okay. Thank you, Peggy, and Sinanda, Budget and Finance Committee, and Vice Chair Smith, if he comes back on. I just want to thank our presenters for today. Navajo Engineering Construction Authority, the Native Development Corporation, and Navajo Housing Authority for being on the call. And hopefully they're still on the call and they're listening to what we're discussing. And the main thing is this is just an initial leadership meeting, as we will be having more discussions in the future regarding housing on the nation and how we could expedite this process using all the resources that we have within our reach. And so with that, I don't know if Vice Chair Smith is back on. He did have a question regarding where do we go, and I believe that we could, at the next meeting, we'll have pretty much a really good understanding of where we're at. But the comment that was made by Shinanda, Delegate Amber Nasla was really good. And I'm hoping that the listeners heard that. And that's where we wish to be as far as moving forward with the housing construction and housing development of the Navajo Nation. With that, we don't have any other presenters, right, Peggy?
Yeah, Chair Haney, I'm back on board with Vice Chair Smith.
That's correct. No,
Vice Chair Smith. Thank you, Vice Chair Smith. That's just closing up with NECA. And your question regarding where do we go? I believe that we are laying the foundation here with the initial meeting that we're having. And so as we move along with these leadership meetings, I think the idea will start come together with all the presenters that we had today. And then that way we can start formulating a housing plan as far as a subcommittee. I believe that we as a budget and finance committee could handle this task as we move along until we do get, the group gets a little larger, then maybe we could think about that. But I yield the floor back to you, Vice Chair Smith.
Thank you, Chair Henio, for that response on behalf of that. I know that we have a big work session tomorrow, and it'll be all day, and then Friday too. So I encourage all those that are on board to listen in, to hear the dialogue. And housing will be one of the big topics, and other topics will be presented tomorrow on the legislation 0257-21, sponsored by Speaker Damon and co-sponsored by a couple other delegates, Navajo Nation 24th Council. And I appreciate the presentations by Navajo Housing Authority and also DDC and also NECA, and providing this information that is vital to getting information so that we can provide that to our chapters and to help our community members. The other thing too is we need to keep close contact on where we're going with this and how we're going to facilitate this and how we're going to accomplish this. And yes, we can explore other areas, and within, like Shiprock is talking about having an area where they can possibly manufacture homes, and then take it out to the home site areas and construct them out there, or just have a warehouse for materials that can be shipped over there and located, and that way we don't have to travel off very far from the job site to get materials that's needed. Committee members, I think we've wrapped this up, and I don't think there's any more questions, but I just want to wish everybody on board Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and be safe. Next is old business. We don't have any new business at 10. And now we're back to number 8, close of the meeting, written announcements. Peggy, do we have any written announcements? Have anything that needs to be addressed before we go into an adjournment? And I know that the weather last night was detrimental, and some of us got knocked out with power and electricity for a while, but thank goodness the weather is subsided with that strong winds, and it's heading eastbound. Peggy, do we have anything on written announcements, or committee members? Do we have any written announcements?
Vice Chair, at this time, we don't have any written announcements, just that we have our regular meeting on the 21st of December. That's the next committee meeting that we have.
Thank you, Shada, for that. Committee members, any announcements before we close up the leadership meeting? It is now 1:03 p.m. I'm not hearing any, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to a closure at 1:04 p.m. And we didn't open up with a quorum, so Peggy, do we need to get a motion for an adjournment and a second for an adjournment, or we just close the meeting accordingly because this leadership meeting didn't require a quorum?
It's your call, Vice Chair, if you'd like to have a motion and second to close the meeting. That's your call, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
I'll call for adjourn. This is Delegate Yell here.
Second, Delegate McKay.
I'll recognize the motion and second. Motion by Honorable Yellow Hair, second by Honorable Elmer Begay. We have a motion and a second. Any questions on the adjournment? I guess there's no questions. Roll call, Sherelle, on the votes for the adjournment.
Okay, Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Honorable Elmer PBK votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote? Honorable Amber Knezba Crotty, how do you vote?
Shadeja, this is Delegate Amber Kenneth-Bakrati, and I'll vote green. Thank you.
Honorable Amber Knezba Crotty votes green. Honorable Jamie Henio, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Honorable Jamie Henio votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote?
I'll vote green. Thank you.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote? Honorable Vice Chair Raymond Smith Jr., you have 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting, which is including Honorable Vice Chair Raymond Smith Jr. not voting and Honorable Nathaniel Brown not voting, Vice Chair.
Thank you for that roll call vote, Sherelle. Committee members, have a good day, and thank you for this leadership meeting. And thank you for setting up the leadership meeting and calling in. And those that were with us this morning, Navajo Housing Authority and Dene Development Corporation and Navajo Engineering and Construction Authority. You guys have a good and wonderful day. And those that were listening on, God bless you all and have a nice day. Okay, we're closing at 1:06 p.m.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for leading our meeting. And this is the end of our